Billings City Council for some reason. Hopefully we'll move as efficiently tonight. Our agenda has 9 different presentations on it. Some presentations are scheduled for as little as 5 minutes, so that remains to be seen whether that will actually happen, but we will try to move quickly. I think everybody here has heard the introductory comments before, but we are no longer requiring masks for vaccinated persons. We encourage everyone to get vaccinated. We're on the honor code on that. If you haven't been vaccinated, do encourage you to continue to wear masks for your protection and for others, and to get vaccinated. Just a reminder, there's only one microphone here, so everybody always needs to speak loudly. When we get to the point of public comment at the end of these 9 presentations, we'll look first to people in the library, but then anyone on Zoom will need to tell the clerk that they want to be unmuted, and they can do that by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of their Zoom screen. And then our city clerk will unmute them at that point. So we'll just jump right in unless Chris Kukulski has anything for us before we look to our library presentation.
No, we can go ahead and jump right into the presentations.
Okay, let's do it. Gavin, if you're the presenter, it's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before beginning the presentation, I'd like to thank my staff, Jamie Auger, Hannah Stewart-Freeman, and Kelsey Rubich for providing the information that you are about to see tonight. It is important to remember, as I share the information about the library, that we are a city-county library. So obviously this last year has shown us some challenges, and thrown us some challenges that I really believe that we have taken these challenges and made them into a lot of successes. Everything from working at Riverstone in the capacity of contact tracing, to getting national recognition for our senior outreach programs, to the creation of PPE, to having staff work with fire and public works, the clerk's office, to myself acting as the PIO. We have really shown how dynamic and versatile the Billings Public Library personnel are and will remain to be. Something that is really neat that has happened this year, we were recognized by the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution with their National Award for Excellence in Community Service, and that was for when we operated as a daycare center for first responders. Now, these challenges have not come without obviously effect to our numbers and our overall services. As you'll see in our total items checked out, that number is usually about 950,000 to 1 million items that we check out a year. Obviously, that's down. We were closed for some of this portion, but that was not without success. As you can see on the far column, we have 173,466 items that went out through our curbside service. Now, what's even more impressive is that most curbside service, those patrons were requesting 2 or 3 items per transaction. So that's quite a bit of transactions that we provided. Additionally, our utilization of space has looked vastly different this last year. As of Feb 1, we were open and in limited capacity. We'll move to phase 3 June 1. But as you can see, I mean, we've been a place for COVID vaccination clinics, the first responder child care, and obviously for the council meetings that you are all experiencing right now. Just for a little more overview of our community impact, we did about 470 library programs remotely during our time of being closed to the public. A lot of our services, whether they're online databases, Frigo, Zinio for online magazines, online language acquisition program, you can see that we're just south of 270,000 downloads this last year. What's really impressive is that since we realized that we would be hindered physically from interacting with our patrons, we were very intentional about creating that digital sphere. Because of that, we had over 1 million social media impressions this last year with those that we serve. And we're going to continue this trend, hopefully, and be very mindful of how we continue to push that digital service and sphere. Finally, we're really looking at changing how we utilize technology. One of the ways is through our library computers and Wi-Fi. One thing that's really impressive is we have 40 new hotspots that have been checked out almost 300 times that have provided almost 100,000 hours of Wi-Fi to patrons that are in need. Of course, the big challenge going forward is getting back to where we were pre-COVID. I have the utmost confidence in my management team and my staff that we will get there. I think it might take us anywhere from 12 to 18 months to see the numbers that we were once producing. However, I am optimistic based off of the last couple of months of our circulation increase, of our foot traffic through the building. So I think a better future is definitely on the horizon. So for FY22 budget expenditures, excluding personnel services and uncontrollable costs, there are really no significant changes to the FY22 operations and maintenance budget from the FY21 budget. Now, I do apologize. You'll see that this slide looks a little bit different from the one that you have in your book. The reason for that is I grossly overestimated our previous estimate that was provided to you in the FY22 fund balance. That is actually closer to the $3.6 million that you see in the adjusted estimate column. FY22 projected revenues are about $4.18 million, expenses about that $3.96 million. In our cash reserves, we are looking at some significant retirements this year from folks who have been with us for about 30 years. So we'll have some payouts there. Obviously, you see the payout, sick, vacation, and retirement, building maintenance fund. So the big change to this slide is when first provided to you, it had that $2.7 million unobligated cash. That is closer to that $2.2 million. The FY22 estimated revenue is just north of $4.1 million. Of course, the largest revenue change is our projected increase in city county property tax revenues, which is just north of $150,000. Again, we are funded by both county and city. And we kind of see this here. County tax coming in about 26%, city tax general fund about 57%, state reimbursement there about 13%, and our other is about 4%. That other constitutes friends of the library donations, foundation donations, donations from patrons, and then fines that we get from overdue materials of that nature. Our O&M is about $1.1 million, personnel services like most of my other colleagues. Obviously, the lion's share at $2.49 million, library materials about $335,000 for a total expenditure of just about $3.965 million. At this time, there are no capital requests for the library. I will breadcrumb this just a little bit, that I hope to in the next couple of years be doing more in the way of expanding services and facilities and things of that nature. Right now, we are devising a master plan that will look out hopefully the next 5 to 8 to 10 years. I do think that we can be real intentional for the next 3 years. After that, I think we're looking at a crystal ball. But once that is completed, I will definitely share that with all of you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much. Questions for Gavin? Gavin, if I can ask you to collapse your screen, then we'll be able to see all the other council members. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Gavin, I'm sorry, I didn't follow you on the corrections on that. Could you send replacement pages to wherever these changes were on your budget? I wasn't following where you said the book we had is wrong, what your numbers were.
Sure, Councilmember Neese, that will be on page 7. And that page was provided today in the presentation packet that you received.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the budget book. Did you say the budget book was wrong, or just the presentation you sent out to us was incorrect?
No, the presentation that I just provided, Councilmember Neese, is the correct one. Our previous estimates were incorrect.
Gavin, in the budget or in your PowerPoint that you shared for this morning? Where were they incorrect?
No, the one I just shared today are the correct, accurate numbers. The ones that we prepared come January, February, those numbers were a little higher because we were not operating the capacity that we are now. Because of the way we're operating now, we incurred more costs.
Okay.
Andy has his hand up.
What's that, Councilmember Denise?
Andy said he looked like he was going to.
Oh, Andy.
I think to perhaps help Gavin out, go to the budget on page 172 of your budget book is the library fund. The changes, when we developed the estimates for FY21, that was beginning back in February timeframe, and the library was not open at that time. What Gavin's saying is that the numbers on that page are inaccurate today because we're now open and operating, and activity is quite a bit different. And so the fund balance number that we estimated ending 21 back in February is no longer accurate, but instead the information in the slide he shared today is more likely accurate. I think, is that a good explanation, Gavin?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Ewalt and Purington?
Thank you, Mayor. Gavin, if you could please shed some light on page 172, city taxes, actual 19 to proposed 22. Increase is 106,000, 106,006. County property tax, actual 19 to proposed 22, is a decrease of $205,000, almost $206,000. Can you shed some light on why theirs is going down so much? Looking like the city owns more of the library or funds it more than the county does now. So,
Councilmember Ewald, I do not have an answer for that question. I don't know how the county figures that out. I can definitely ask the county that when I present to them.
Chris Kukulski or Andy, do you have an input on that?
I suspect what it is it was a few years ago, and it's probably 19, that we received a large settlement of protested taxes from the county. So you probably will see it in the planning fund as well, where we collect county tax revenue. We can confirm that, but I suspect that's what happened, is we got a large settlement of protested taxes that year. So it was a one-year spike. I think if you saw 18, it would be flat, 19 would jump up, 20 would drop back down. That's why there's a decline.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Purington.
Just a quick ask. So the city on the revenue contributes 57% and the county is 26%. What dictates those amounts? Is that
Yeah, Councilwoman Purington, that's a great question. So in the interlocal agreement, there's a set amounts. The county is at 3 mils. The city is at a dedicated 5 mil, and then a 4.5 mil from the general fund transfer. And that was decided on, I can't give you an exact date, but for a while now.
Okay, any other questions? Gavin, maybe you can comment on, you mentioned fines. Some libraries have moved away from fines because they tend not to get paid, and the threat of fines keeps people from coming back to the library, also from bringing the items back to the library. How's that working out for us? Some libraries I know have gone to amnesty programs periodically. Can you just comment generally on where we stand with the fine process?
Yeah, Mayor, that's a great question. Right now, we are actually having an internal conversation. Since the advent of the onset of the pandemic, we have actually been fine-free. So we have not collected fines in about over a year now. Now, this does not include if you have lost something or damaged something, the accountability is intact still.
And as a result of not charging the fines, did you see a change in behavior for good or for bad, or can you tell?
Mayor, that's a great question. I guess as the eternal optimist that I am, I will say that we've had good behavior change, but I really can't put a quantitative number to that in the way of here's what we know. I will say that there are a lot of studies out there qualitatively that do say when you have an M&C program, as you alluded to, you have more interaction with the public. You have more interaction with folks who may at one time have been afraid to return back to the library because of a fine or what have you. I do know, I will say that in Montana, the large libraries, the 7 of us, so 4 of them have gone fine-free.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Gavin before we move to the next item? Any other questions for Gavin? I'm not seeing any. So Gavin, thank you to you and your staff.
Thank you.
And great work you've done over this last year. Next item then is Building and Facilities, Jessica Iverson, and that is page 57 and 62 of your budget book, in case you're tracking it that way. So, Jessica.
All right, you see it all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Let me pull this up. All right, well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jessica Iverson. I'm the Building Official and Facilities Division Manager, and I'm happy to be here to present the FY22 budget. So I'll start with the Building Division. The Building Division enforces the state-adopted building codes for all structures in the city of Billings. Our mission is to ensure the safety, security, and health of Billings citizens and visitors through building code enforcement. The Building Division services comprise of 2 major components. First, we have permitting and plan review. So we have a deputy building official overseeing that part of the division. There are 2 plans examiners and 2 permit technicians. We intake permit applications, do plan review, and issue permits. We complete comprehensive plan review, which includes building, structural, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, energy code, and accessibility codes. And then on the inspection side, once the permits are issued, we provide comprehensive inspection services throughout the course of the construction project. We have a senior inspector, 5 combination inspectors, 2 electrical inspectors, and 1 plumbing inspector. And like I said, we provide inspections during all phases, so footing, foundation, frame, MEP, insulation, roof inspections, remodels, and final inspections. Some Building Division highlights from this last year. The Building Division was realigned under administration and is managed by the Building and Facilities Manager, myself. As of May 1st, the Building Division is fully staffed after going through a significant staff reduction last year, primarily through retirement. So we're really excited about being fully staffed and having some great new people on board. We've implemented electronic plan review on March 1st, so all plans for review are now submitted online, and people are getting their approved plans electronically as well. We handled a significant increase in project volume over the last year. In 2020 calendar year, there were 551 new structures built in the city of Billings versus 427 in 2019. Through April of this year, we had issued permits for 148 single-family homes compared to 85 over the same period last year. Our building revenues are projected to be about $310,500 more than last year's budget. Last year's construction activity was more than expected, and construction is continuing strong. Revenues are based almost entirely on plan review and permit fees, and the rise in revenue is due to increased project valuations and number of permits. On the expenditure side, we're up about $139,076 over FY21. So the increase This is actually a error on my part. So the increase, if you look at it, we actually put some capital funds in for new offices. Our office lease is up in the Miller Building, and we're hopeful that we might have a new City Hall facility in FY22 to build out offices. So personnel costs and software maintenance costs and fuel prices did go up, but the way that this budget, the expenditures over last year actually are due to that capital expense that we have budgeted in. So the building goals for FY22, we want to improve the customer's experience with online permitting and plan review software. We want to provide more digital services for our customers. We want to continue digitizing our paper plans so that we have electronic copies of everything. We want to increase the number of certifications each inspector and plans examiner holds and provide training opportunities. As I mentioned, a lot of our staff is newer, and so we're really excited about getting them certified and learning about the codes and properly enforcing the codes. And so we want to continue to provide timely and consistent plan review and inspections. And then I'm going to go right into facilities, and then we'll do questions at the end. So on the facilities division side, that's an internal service. We operate and maintain the BOC and City Hall, the animal shelter, and then we do other projects throughout the city. Our mission is to serve the city by efficiently and effectively operating, maintaining, and improving facilities. Facility functions and services, we provide an array of management services and operations and maintenance to maintain those buildings and those facilities that we are operating. Some facility division highlights. The BOC land purchase was completed this year. That's that 20 acres adjacent to the current BOC campus. We already have a couple projects planned for that land. We completed the police evidence facility. We are active in the due diligence part of the new City Hall or Law and Justice Center facility. We're managing projects at Fire Station 6 and 4. We have ongoing hailstorm insurance claim projects. We are completing an access control upgrade at BOC. We're implementing a CMMS. We've taken on additional facility management responsibilities at the animal shelter. Facilities was obviously very involved with the COVID-19 response last year with cleaning procedures, supplies, signage, PPE supplies. And then with the realignment of my role over into building, we hired on a new facility supervisor in January of this year. So our facilities revenues from last year to this year increased about 2.7%. We have from the $1,954,427 to the $2,007,751. So our revenues are generated from internal charges to all of our tenants at our various facilities. So this is the breakdown at City Hall. Obviously, police is the largest portion of that as they have the largest footprint in City Hall. This was about a 3% increase over last year. If you'll recall, in FY21, we did not increase any rents over FY20 because of COVID-19 and the uncertainty of our revenues last year. So this is a nominal increase just for increased costs of maintenance and operations. And then at BOC, we had about a 3.7% increase. Again, here's the breakdown for the different departments that are out at BOC. Again, police is a large piece of that. Street and traffic is our largest tenant out there. This is a little misleading because solid waste does not have debt service on the BOC property because they paid their part in cash back when that project was developed. So on the facilities expenditures side, the largest part of our expenditures for the coming year are the funds allocated to the new City Hall facility. So we also have around $3 million anticipated in hail repair projects yet to be completed. The insurance funds are held in facilities accounts for all projects citywide. And we also have the debt service at BOC. That's the annual payment of over $500,000. We have 3 payments left, with the last payment being FY24. Other expenditures are personnel, operating and maintenance costs, utilities for those facilities, and improvement projects. So facilities challenges for the coming year, or ongoing challenges: asset management, accurately inventorying our facilities, components, and resources, being able to track operation costs, maintenance, and replacement schedules; project management, creating and tracking work orders, managing construction projects, insurance claim coordination; and then lastly, staffing. The Facilities Division is understaffed for our current workload, so we're requesting an additional custodial position to bring more services in-house. These are services that are currently contracted out for, and we believe we can provide a better product and better control of those services if we can provide them in-house with additional staff. Further, we're requesting a facility specialist for project coordination and management, asset management, and to complete other division initiatives. We have found out that our greatest lack of resource in the facilities is staff time to properly manage projects and to properly be thinking proactively about how we are maintaining and operating these facilities. So last night you heard Chief Rash talk about one of their goals is to develop a comprehensive 3, 5, and 10-year facilities maintenance plan. So this initiative that we're proposing for this coming year is to partner with the fire department, and it's a key part of the fire department's plan to properly maintain their facilities. So provided that our facilities specialist position is approved, we would be providing the following services to the fire department next year. And this would include a comprehensive condition assessment survey of all of the facilities, a complete asset inventory, preventative maintenance and replacement plans for systems and equipment, a work order tracking system to track the time, expenses, and resources with this new software. We would provide vendor contract management, establishing negotiated rates. Facility staff would coordinate and complete repair work to avoid vendor costs. We would provide sourcing and ordering of consumables and project management services for all construction projects throughout all phases. We would assist the fire department in budgeting and capital planning. So facilities goals for FY22, number one is we need to achieve appropriate staffing levels. Without the staffing that we need to achieve the initiatives that we've set out, it's going to be difficult for us to get where we need to be. Second, implementation of facilities management software to provide more accurate tracking of maintenance, repairs, and projects. And then we want to use that data to improve efficiencies across the facilities and really strategize about our investments. The fire department facilities initiative is an important goal for next year. Further, we will complete the BOC land master plan, and we're planning to do that in-house. And we will continue to work on the solution for the City Hall facility needs and continue to manage the hail insurance claim projects. So we're looking forward to the challenges and opportunities that the coming year presents, and I believe the Facilities Division is in a good position to make a positive, lasting impact across the city in the coming fiscal year. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Questions for Jessica from council? Any questions for Jessica or other staff? Councilmember Yakowicz, Councilmember Ewald?
Thank you, Council and Mayor. Actually, I have a question directed to Mr. Kukulski. In a nutshell, even today I was talking with somebody about why do we need a new City Hall? And I know the mayor just said last night, take his office, or our office, I should say. And plus I was in a room where there's 3 people working with no window. So just a paragraph or 2, why? Because a lot of people are asking me that.
So first of all, please think about who's at City Hall. So you'll recognize that I usually refer to it as the Law and Justice Center and City Hall, because the majority of the space is related to the criminal justice system. At all levels, you have space deficiencies. So we literally, as you say, our last attorney ad or staff there was put in a safe, literally in a safe in the upstairs, the second floor of the space over on the law enforcement side. So each of the departments are functioning out of multiple locations. Center for Public Safety Management, one of their key recommendations, I think right on the first paragraph or two of the full report, was the inefficiency of operating out of 8 different locations to provide their services. So there's an efficiency or a loss in efficiency as we're trying to operate under the current situation. So that'd be the simplest way that I would state it.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was somebody else, Councilor Rewald.
Thank you, Mayor. This 11,800,000 or 600,000 for capital expenditure for the possible city hall. Now, that's really up in the air because it depends on where the city hall will be, how it's going to be. What it's going to be, is it going to be new construction? Is it going to be an old building that's going to be retrofitted? So wouldn't that be better to bring that back as a budget amendment in the case that we find something and now we know what it's going to cost? Because this money is going to be there in the budget. What's to stop that from getting spent on something else?
So first to answer your question, where did we come up with the number? It came out of the I don't know why I can't ever get this right. NAI, thank you. The NAI, we paid NAI to give us an assessment of the value of the property of which we intended to make an offer on. So that number isn't just a number pulled out of the air. The old number, if you look at some previous budgets and CIPs, came from the planning process. So we think it's more refined based on that estimate. Now, that was just the estimated value. So to answer that piece of it, that's where the number comes from. And I think the work that's been done does suggest it should be budgeted for in this next year. Yesterday we received the appraisals. The meeting is scheduled for early next week with the owner of the property, and the meeting is scheduled with the subcommittee of the council to go over that information. So I think we're far enough along in the process that we should expect to be making offers on purchasing and dealing with this, not just as a theoretical expenditure, but a real expenditure. Secondly, your question about could I go and spend that someplace else? If I were to do that, I mean, my credibility with you, our credibility with you is you budgeted 11.6 for that facility. Me spending that somewhere else is problematic to the adopted budget in utilization of those funds. So you could take it the route you are when what you're suggesting of actually knowing what these numbers are, but I think you should have an estimate in the budget because we expect to spend and make an offer on that Law and Justice Center space and City Hall space actually before this fiscal year ends, based on those appraisals. That'll ultimately be your call, but the preview is the numbers are such that I believe we will be making an offer. That'll be up to you guys.
Okay. Councilor Rewald and Councilor Purrington?
So we've got an increase, when you take that off, we've got an increase of almost $3 million over last fiscal year. What's that $3 million for?
We're talking about the general budget or
No, I'm talking-
facilities?
If you take the 11.6 off for the facilities, then the proposed F-22 budget is almost $3 million higher than the budget for fiscal '21.
Correct.
Okay, so we're talking about hail claims.
They're all hail claims that we pay ourselves, or the insurance is supposed to help with it, or what's the deal?
Jessica, can you help us out there with the kind of the specifics? Thanks.
Sure.
Excuse me, are we looking at a particular page from the PowerPoint?
Page 59, under expenses, operation.
Page 59 of the budget book? Is that?
Under budget.
Budgeted expenditures.
Okay, go ahead. Jessica?
Yep, thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Ewald. That is $3 million that we currently have paid to us by insurance that we're going to be spending next year for the hail repairs. So we already have that $3 million in a hail-specific account that will be spent on hail repairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Purington.
Regarding the 11.6, I thought we also got CARES fund that, I know we haven't really put it in any place, but that was the goal for something that was capital expenses. Where is the CARES money?
You'll see that in the reserve amounts.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Jessica or other staff? Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. I appreciate it. Be a lot going on in your department in the next year.
All right, thank you.
Information technology, that is page 150 of your budget book, page 150. And Dave Watterson, I assume. Dave, it's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure tonight to share with you the information about the IT FY22 budget. Our goals in IT are to bring people and technology together to meet the needs of the organization. In FY21, some of the highlights of our year include launching a new city website, which allowed us to distribute and share a lot of information about the public safety mill levy. It also allowed us to provide our community with a great deal of information and access to information about the coronavirus in Yellowstone County and our community. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We launched new online payments for utilities. We're in the midst of rolling out electronic time clocks. Our fire mobile inspections modules went live. During a year where recruitment was very difficult, we were blessed to be able to recruit 5 new staff members. We unfortunately said goodbye to some very talented and knowledgeable people who mostly retired. But on a good note, we were able to get very good qualified people, and they have hit the ground running, and we're very excited for the future of IT. We helped the transition when everyone, I say, scattered out to their rabbit holes during the COVID scare and the change in our workplace. We helped transition to video conferencing and work from home. We had a lot of security enhancements, including multi-factor authentication, some upgraded email filters, and other enhancements to improve our footprint. And we finished the rollout of our new phone system. In FY22, we're looking forward with a complete review of our enterprise software systems. We're looking at large improvements or reworking as Public Works has made a large investment, and the whole organization is looking at improvements in our GIS plan. We are looking to develop a CIP hub, which will allow you and staff and our community to have access to our capital improvement plan, much in the same way as we have rolled out the coronavirus information. And so that's an exciting project that we'll be working with finance on. We're going to be expanding our use of CityWorks, continue to focus on security. We're rolling out a new fleet management system, online employment, and continued implementation of our time clock system. In March of 2020, we launched the Coronavirus Response Hub. Since that time, we have gotten over 75,000 hits on that page, and we continue to get closer to 1,800 to 1,200 hits every week. It's been consistent. We get a report, and it just seems to be like clockwork. Our GIS team has rolled out a total of 36 interactive maps where yourself and citizens and staff can get access to information within our city, from election districts to road closures, street sweeping, city zoning. There's 36 different ones available, and you can see the website referenced there, but through our city website. It's a very exciting development for our GIS team. In FY22, we're looking at a total budget of $2,981,000. Our personal services make up 68% of our overall budget, and we are about $85,000 over what we were last year, but that is predominantly, almost to the dime, based on a move of the Public Works GIS Asset Analyst position from Public Works into the IT GIS team. So we had an increase in our O&M, and it was due to cyclical increases in technology investments. And it was also due, if you, again, as Jessica pointed out in her presentation, there were expenses that we kept our expenses low. We took multiple year contracts and made them 1 year contracts. We did some things in order to lower our expenses and therefore our charges out in FY20 because unknown budgetary outlook for the city. And so some of that is flowing back into this year's budget. We have a $40,000 expenditure that will upgrade the backbone of our servers and storage and communications. That brings us to our central telephone services budget. The budget for FY22 is collectively lower than FY20 by almost $60,000. And that is because we had a $70,000 capital project last year, and we have none this year. So relatively no significant change in the expenses for FY22 in the phone budget. Some exciting savings I look forward to, or love the opportunity here to share with you. We were able to eliminate replacement of our tape backup system, which saved us a $41,000 one-time investment, which kept our expenses down this year. We were able to work through some contract and with CenturyLink and realign our analog lines. That was completed in April, and we should look at about $4,500 over the course of the next 12 months. Looking forward, we have our main phone service, which are called our PRI lines, under contract, so we can't change them right now. But we have estimates, and we project at the end of the year, we'll be able to make a change. And at that point, we should be on track for about an $8,000 a year savings. We are also, over the summer, going to be making some changes in what are called our Centrex lines, which again, once completed, we should be looking at about $4,800 a year. So some exciting savings. What are our challenges? 7, 8 years ago, security was a talking point. It was something that we thought of. We did some things, there were people still with passwords of password or 123 or their name. But security has become our number one. Maintaining our security roadmap, implementing new security-related policies and solutions, and security monitoring to detect and assess daily threats. Security is always changing, always evolving. Staffing is a big issue with us in IT. New systems and technologies require more staffing resources. That pulls at our people and our need for employee resources. On the other hand, more and more staff resources are allocated to security, which further impacts our ability to provide that application support at the levels that we feel we should be delivering. And so it is a constant challenge for us. as security continues to take up more of our time and effort. Succession planning is also a big deal with us. We have 2 senior people, an IT manager and a senior application developer specialist with over 30 years of experience. We always say they are the ones that are one bad day away from retirement. We have 2 people, myself included, with 25 years of experience, and our network administrator, which are not far from the eligibility points. And 2 people that are very helpful in our organization within IT that are of retirement age. So we are keeping a focus on how do we align people and resources to be able to handle the transition as these people make their way into the next phase of their life. When looking at security, hardening, we always talk about hardening our shield. How can we improve our environment to make it more difficult, less inviting for anyone to attempt to mess with us, if you will. Our security is focused on hardening the shield. Industry best practices, #1 action for enhancing security levels in our organization is cybersecurity training. By providing monthly training and providing updates and emails to staff, we're working to increase awareness to which is critical to cybersecurity. In addition to that, enhancing our network visibility. By doing so, we can see more of what's going on. We can see trends. We can identify malicious behavior. We have done enhanced logging, and we have improved our endpoint desktop protection. In addition, we have implemented multi-factor authentication, which is one of the top security recommendations for hardening your environment. One of the other things we're doing, which relates to cybersecurity training, is we're simulating phishing exercises. So sometimes the email you get, which may seem like, wow, this is easy to pick out, may or may not be us testing our organization's staffing, engaging where we're at in our preparedness and what areas maybe we need to pay more attention to. As you might imagine, one of the biggest threats to us comes through email. It comes through phishing, it comes through viruses, and it comes through dangerous or malicious-based links. We combat evil with cybersecurity training, with behavioral-based antivirus desktop protection, and improved logging. We are deploying a new vulnerability patch management system, which is required by the Montana Department of Justice to be in place by July 1. Any questions?
Thank you, David. I'll start us on where you left off, which is the security threat. A day doesn't go by where we don't see a new story about ransomware and how that's impacting a city or a large organization around the world. Can you address the issue of ransomware? And specifically, I know nothing, but it does seem to me that we would benefit by running some sort of a mock drill so that we're prepared to respond quickly. In particular, talk about issues like, would we pay a large ransom? Who would make that decision? Would it be the city administrator? It'd be a large hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially of unbudgeted expense? Or do we decide not to pay? And what are the consequences? What would it cost to repair our network in dollars, time, all those issues? Doesn't seem like in the heat of an emergency is the time to first get familiar with those issues at the council and city administrator level. So can you address ransomware?
All right. Well, that is, you opened a whole bucket full of worms there. some of which I will respond to here. This is not code for I don't know, but I will be careful in how I respond to some of your questions, in that providing too much information in itself is a danger and welcoming unwanted activity, if you will. I will say that we take great measures to put multiple layers of defense against a ransomware attack. We also have plans in place to have what's called cold or offline storage, because in essence, what happens is once they are in your network, they encrypt as much as they can of your data. And once it's encrypted, there's no getting at it, unless you pay them, which may or may not work, to get the encryption keys. So by having offline or cold storage that is not attached to where it can't be infected, helps you to restore systems. So we do a lot of work in that aspect. We have cybersecurity insurance, and that helps us to mitigate our losses. It also brings to the table a host of forensics experts, from legal teams to cybersecurity experts. We have had to use that a number of years ago, and it was a false positive, which is fantastic. It ultimately wasn't anything. But to see the wheels spin up and to see the machine go into action was impressive, from my staff to the insurance company and their resources. So we are also under the constant eye or vision of the Montana Department of Justice and the FBI. They do exercises and probes and audits of our system. We are part of the local government IT group, which includes the Montana Department of Justice and their security people. They come out each year with one or two initiatives of things that we must do, which are fantastic. They're always great initiatives that help harden our systems and give us direction, and so we do those. So we come at it from a lot of different angles, from one, doing everything we can to prevent it, to having insurance to mitigate our financial loss, to having offline and cold storage and multiple layers of storage for backups, to eliminate our downtime and the impact to our organization. And I am kind of hitting a lot of different things here. One of the other things we have is we have what we call high availability. So if some systems are hit or brought down, we can bring up other systems very quickly. Again, that in the old days, we advocated for that kind of technology for public safety, but with the way virtualized systems work today, we can utilize that same technology at very little extended cost to help with other areas of the organization. So I'm not sure if I hit all of your questions, so please, if you have more, I'm here and available.
Thank you, David. Very, very helpful. The only question, I guess, is if there's a need for a further education of the city council in particular, or you're comfortable that that's not necessary. Obviously, we defer to you and the city administrator on that. I'm not hearing. I guess I'm not hearing a role for the city council that these, if it were happen tomorrow, it's something that your department and the city administrator would handle magically.
I would maybe defer to Chris Kukulski on this, or Kevin Iflin. From a technology standpoint, we would do all we could from our resources. Once it comes to the standpoint of our option is to, start over or pay the ransom, that decision is over my head, and I would I would point to administration and to, as to how to proceed with that.
Okay, and we don't have to do it publicly, but that issue is still out there. Let's move on. Other questions for David? Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, with this, these personal cameras that the police are gonna start using, how does that factor into your IT department any, or are you gonna have to hire another person to just do that, or do you have no involvement in it?
Mayor and Councilmember Ewald, we work hand in hand with the police department in supporting their technology needs. Back in 2008, when the first police public safety initiative came through, one of the things that was included in that was an IT position to support the public safety technology. And so that person supports both police and fire. They do support currently all the cameras in the cars. And now we're adding body cameras, and those will act very much the same and feed to the same server resources. And so we provide support to the police department. They, of course, will be the experts in how the body cameras or the cameras in the cars work, and they manage the data on a day-to-day basis. And we are here to support any issues with the technology or any questions they have, anything that comes up. But we would not have to add people for that. It will stretch them a little. It does add more to what we're supporting, no doubt. But we don't foresee the need for adding staff right now for that.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Chris.
Remember last night, part of the discussion is of a couple people in the IT. One, I guess you would label IT, another one I talked about in the training area. It wouldn't exclusively be related to body cameras, but body cameras, as you look at the Center for Public Safety Management report, talks about the increased storage, impact, requests for freedom of information, and how we manage that in the redacting of that. So I'd say you've added demand for services in IT, legal, and law enforcement connected to advancements in technology investments. No one of them, I think, are tipping us over necessarily. Like I said, the chief and I had in the numbers you saw last night, we had 6 plus 2. So we had the full CPSM recommendations, 6 more sworn, plus 2, one of which is kind of in this area.
Okay, any other questions for Dave before we move on to administration? Don't see any, so Chris, administration, the lightning round. You allocated yourself 5 minutes.
All right, Andy's gonna kick us off here. Or actually, I'm kicking us off, so let's get rolling here. So out of the gate, we've got admin. Not much change there. The primary change is the addition of a part-time deputy clerk to a full-time deputy clerk. So that was not a full-time position. You'll see that added roughly half FTE there. There's some, unfortunately, there's not a PIO in there. That was the one I had in the draft, but didn't make the final cut. As well as you don't have the Center for Public Safety Management studies. They were last year. So that's the primary changes the clerk office had.
So, well, we should clarify, we were gonna do administration, mayor, council, finance, and HR all together, and then just follow for questions on all 4 of those. since
Sounds
there's so
good.
many people.
Thanks, Andy. So on the mayor council side, there are 2 primary areas. The ordinance that was passed a couple years ago does adjust salaries for council and mayor, effective, I think, January 1 of 2022. So that's in this fiscal year budget. And we did reinstitute the council contingency fund. That was something that existed in the past, went away for a few years, and is in there today at 25. I'll tell you, it was 50, got reduced to 25. For the last couple of years, it's been 0. I'm not sure where it peaked at before that change where it kind of normally sat. But those are in the mayor council budget kind of adjustments.
Okay. In the general fund, non-departmental, the total budget's $40,400,000. This is where you find the general fund transfer to the public safety fund, which is there's $26.5 million. That's the largest expense there. You'll also find the transfer of $11.6 million for the Law and Justice Center. This is the amount that was in the FY22 CIP. I'll take a moment here to kind of explain why you're seeing it here and also in that facilities budget. The way we're doing this is the CARES Act money came into the public safety fund. That drove up the reserve in the general fund. So the money is currently there. Our proposal is to transfer it into a capital fund where we will pay for expenses for a law and justice facility out of that fund. So there's a transfer out of the general fund into a capital expense fund. Capital expense fund is the facilities one that Jessica mentioned earlier. You'll also find in the non-departmental $1.1 million transfer to the library, which is consistent with the interlocal agreement amount of 4.5 mils from the general fund, or an amount equivalent to 4.5 mils. There are what I've kind of categorized as other expenses totaling 1.1 million. The large one there is insurance premiums for general fund and public safety. It's about $600,000. We have $80,000 to $100,000 in there for elections, since it is a general election year and potentially a primary election. I want to make sure we have enough budgeted for that. We have our costs for Channel 7 in there, and resource outreach coordinator, $25,000. And then some small amounts for publication, public notices, things like that. And that's what makes up the non-departmental portion of your budget. Finance department, the operating budget for the finance department is $1.7 million to cover 11 FTEs. The total finance department budget is $15.8 million. That's because we make sure a significant portion of the debt is fully paid. That consists of all of your GO debt. And this year, when we're refunding the library debt, we borrowed the money in FY21. It's about $7 to $8 million. We won't actually pay that until FY22. So you see a large expense in FY22 paying that off. And that's just due to the timing of the end of the fiscal year, which is approaching. Again, one other thing I want to highlight, we do have a transfer of $2.1 million. This is one time from the SID revolving fund. The IRS says we can only have 15% of our total outstanding debt in that fund, and that fund is accumulated through SID bonds. And as that grows or as bonds are paid off, we have to make sure that balance doesn't get too high. And so we are transferring it into the general fund to cover some one-time expenses as they come forward. That is the finance department. I'll turn it over to Carla for human resources.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to present to you the Human Resources, Health Insurance, Property and Liability budgets for the City of Billings. Human Resources, as many departments in the city, run a gamut of responsibilities. We run from benefits administration, payroll, workers' compensation, liability and property, our drug and alcohol testing programs, grievance and arbitration, contract administration, recruitment and retention, selection, and FMLA, and many more. The average age, and I'll count on you to move the slides, thank you. Okay. The age of the City of Billings is 45 years of age. That is down slightly from 46.4 a year ago. Average length of service is 9.7 years of service, and that is down considerably from 14.6 years of service a year ago. And that is due largely to retirement. In 2020, we had the most retirements that I've seen in my career here. We had 44 retirements. And then year to date, from January going through June, we have already 22 people that have either retired or given notice for 21 through June only. We have 940 employees, as you're well aware, and we go up to almost 300 seasonals in the summertime. HR expenditures are made mostly of 63% of personal services and 37% in O&M. And our O&M, as you can see in the top left-hand corner, involves IT, facility charges, our time tracking, which is the timekeeping system that David Watterson referred to. You'll see an increase in consultant services. That is where my largest expense is increased, due mainly to training. A city this size, 940 employees, 1,200 in the summer. We need to do a better job of training. Currently we do not have the time to do so. So what we're trying to do is look at different webinar programs, hire some consultants, and do some of it, of course, in-house as much as we can. But we need really a trained person. I understand that funding is not available, so we are asking for additional funding there in lieu of a person. Insurance premiums are part of the expenditure, and then employee assistance programs make up the top 6 with us. And you'll see the insurance premium really refers to the cybersecurity. For some reason right now that is in the HR budget. David did a great job talking to all of you about that, and I do think maybe that will be moved initially or eventually to his budget, but currently we took a big hit there. And because it is such a need for employers all across the country, the cost really went up. But we were fortunate enough, we had to switch vendors, but we were able to lock into an 18-month deal versus a year deal, because it is a number that is just increasing daily. So that cost did increase, though, $20,000. So 50-some thousand of my increase is in those 2 items. But back to the consultants, the training that we need to do. There's training we should be doing, nearly annually or at least semi-annually, and some of that is, harassment, diversity and inclusion, bloodborne pathogen, reasonable suspicion, drug and alcohol, testing really for supervisors, bloodborne pathogen, ethics training. There's just a gamut of the things, and we have so many new supervisors and new employees that we really need to get this training out. It is critical to help us with deal with our employees and so that they can make good decisions. Okay, Andy, health and dental. I think our greatest accomplishment is really right now our health plan as far as HR goes. We have a committee, as you're well aware, a 15-member committee made up of police, fire, Teamsters, retiree, and non-bargaining people. And if you all recall, in 2011 we made a tough decision. And we ended up selecting one provider that I believe is the single most, the best decision we've made as a health fund. We are very well reserved now, and because of those reserves, we've been able to kick off some wellness programs. I don't know if you recall Healthy Is, and you'll see those emails come up through Lita. That is a body composition type program with health coaches, and it has been very well received by our employees, so we continue to do that. The other thing is a preventive program. We want to establish relationships with providers. We need our employees to go to the doctor annually so that they can catch things early and save us money in the long run. And the other thing that we're doing this coming fall is we are going to bring back some of the on-site health assessment or blood draws. We took them off-site about 3 years ago and tried to go totally with a provider-employer participant partnership. It did decrease the number of people that are doing their blood work every year, and that is critical to catch things early. So therefore, we will bring back on-site probably 4 or 5 locations this fall and catch those young people that maybe they don't need to go to the doctor every year, but you know what? Maybe they need to know their numbers so that they can see if there's a trend in the wrong direction and get to that provider when they need to. The other thing, the large expense you'll see here is stop loss premium. That is projected to go up to 15% for FY22. The beauty of having a well-reserved health insurance fund currently is we usually look at those premiums in about October for January of 22. Each year we've taken on more risk because we're able to take on more risk as a plan. So I anticipate in an effort to get those premiums down, we may do that too. We are now at a $235,000 with $50,000 aggregate for our health fund. And what that means is, of course, we cover the first $235,000 of any large case, and then this carrier covers the difference. Any questions? No, I don't want to ask questions. That's all. The next screen has liability and property. And I have bad and good news on this one. Liability, the good news is it's going to remain flat. And the other good news we have is because of experience and excess reserves at MMIA, our liability carrier, we are going to receive a dividend to to go against our premium that we pay in August or fiscal year 22, and it's $150,000. So that is good news. The bad news, of course, is the property insurance. In an effort to reduce property insurance for FY21, we took our deductible from $100,000 to $250,000. And that was just in an effort to get the premium down. Of course, you're all aware, Jessica did a great job presenting on the facilities and the work that's been done at all the stations as a result of our 2019 hailstorm. We are seeing that in our property premiums. We are projecting it at 18%. We don't have that final number yet. We are still working on trying to work on that and get a better deal. But right now, we are looking at about an 18% increase in property. So that is the bad news. Accomplishments. One of our biggest accomplishments outside of health insurance is this year the City of Billings for 2019 through 2020 won the MMIA Loss Control Award. And what that is, it means that we had the lowest incurred dollars, not percentage, but incurred dollars in workers' comp expenses claims for the year compared to all of the top six largest cities. And of course, we all know we're the largest. So that is really quite a feat to have done that. So we're very proud of that. We thank our employees, we thank our supervisors for working more safe and making smart decisions out there in the field. The other thing that we accomplished, and it sounds silly, but we truly survived COVID. HR. It was tough on us this year because of all the federal programs. You're probably familiar with the Paid Sick Leave Act, the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act. All these programs came down April 1st of 2020. Our workload was unbelievable. We had 130 employees that were quarantined, which meant we had to track that quarantine, make sure they didn't come back too early, make sure they didn't stay out too late. We had 325 employees who experienced symptoms or were tested. So of those 455 employees that were eligible for the paid sick leave, we had 151 of them actually test positive. As you know, with the numbers going down in the county, of course, that has now gone down, so we now see light at the end of the tunnel. But I have to commend Lita and my staff. It was a battle to get through that. We didn't accomplish much else, but we got through that. Anyway, and then, of course, we increased efficiency through more electronic communication. We became a lot more electronic. 100 City of Billings employees teleworked through that when we were trying to separate all of our essential workers so that we would not infect each other. And David talked a little bit about that, so I won't spend any more time on that. Challenges. I guess I'd just go over to challenges right now. And really the two biggest ones on this slide, they are ongoing training. And I think I've alluded to that enough, but we need to train our employees and our supervisors, or it will cost us money down the road in legal costs or other things. So that is critical that we get that done. The other thing is recruitment, retention, and really succession planning, as David alluded and many other people. We have a lot of employees who are retiring, and recruitment and retention is critical right now. We were fortunate in 2020. I think, our turnover rate, as I said, went down from 15% to 10%. And I do think that was people stayed in place a little bit through COVID. But now we're having a hard time recruiting. When we have an open position, it has been very, very difficult to recruit. And we're not alone. I hear that from all the HR people I talk to, all the employers we know, all across the country. But we have to do something to recruit people. And so you'll see in the next month or two, you're going to see some advertisements courtesy of Public Works. I thank them for that. They have put a campaign together in conjunction with us and to advertise our full-time positions, to talk about benefits. We do offer great benefits, and we need to tout that a lot better. So if you know anyone looking for a job, send them our way. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we will open it up for questions of all staff who've made these presentations. So go ahead and raise your hand if you've got a question for any of those recent staff presenters. Questions? While you're thinking about a question, I'll just kind of make a comment and let Chris comment if he would like to. But on the mayor and council presentation, that item total budget $320,000, sort of page 2 or 3 of the PowerPoint. Included in that is expenses of the city council itself. About a month ago, I sent Chris an email asking about city policy on reimbursing city council members for expenses. Our city council people get paid very little and rarely, in my experience, submit requests for reimbursement for travel, for educational materials, for seminars, taking constituents to coffee, picking up the lunch tab, any of things like that. And we've never had any real discussion about, do we have a budget? Should we have a debit card or something? And I'm concerned that as a result of that, that our council members maybe are not availing themselves of seminars and educational materials and meetings, and that's not fair when they're paid so little and expected to take on those expenses. So they dug into a little bit, and what's included in that figure is the sum of $1,350 for each council member and $3,000 for the mayor. I've been here 3.5 years, and I had no idea. I knew you could submit stuff, but there was never any specificity to it. So I wanted to pass that on. Chris, if you want to comment further, maybe you've changed that. It's really $1.35 now, but that's my understanding on that issue. Is that
So Mayor,
correct?
you describe it correctly. It hasn't gone up or down, so I think it is included in the budget as it has been. So that does make up part of what we anticipate expenses are. Inevitably, at least what I've experienced over the years, some people participate in the state league or a national league or some other things like that. And so those dollars are not assigned to each of you. They're just in that for all the things that the mayor described for your work and your service. And opportunities to learn, and I would advocate as the mayor has. It is an investment, and I would say a good investment for elected officials to get training and understand what is going on in other communities around the country and locally. So sometimes I've seen us, not necessarily here, but I think we're all prone, we can become penny wise and pound foolish relative to saving a buck but not learning as much as you can from what's going on elsewhere. So I would encourage you to use that. It is a part of the budget. I did shoot out a question. We talked about the idea of prepaid cards or cards, and I can tell you the resounding feedback was nobody's doing that. And I think from a control standpoint, it's just better to use the systems that we have, but recognize they're fully reimbursable for legitimate expenses, and the work that Lynette does and that finance does, you don't wait a long time to get a reimbursement on any of those expenses. But those controls are really important for your security as well as anybody else's, because at some point, I've been challenged numerous times over my career. You will get challenged on an expense, and so it's very important that we have the backup paperwork for it to defend what it is.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for administration, HR, finance? Councilmember Joy, Ewald, Purington, and Ronning, and Tricky. Everybody. We'll start with Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My question is to Mr. Zeller. The budget assumption is 4.9% growth, I believe. I was wondering if you could kind of explain why that number and how confident you are in that number when it comes to property tax.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, Councilmember Joy. The number for property tax growth assumed in the budget is 4.5%. What we do is we get the City of Billings broken apart by tax class and industry, and the City of Billings is 52% residential. And then we get a lot of sale data, residential sale data, and building permit data to kind of make estimates on each tax class and what the growth will be within each individual tax class. And then sum it all up and arrive at a number. And that's how we got to 4.5. The large driver is residential growth. We we use residential sale data from the Billings Association of Realtors to estimate what that growth is going to be. We won't know what the actual tax growth is until the first week in August. And the DOR gives us that number.
So if I could just add, if we've underestimated or overestimated, that's where we're always anxious to see what the Department of Revenue gives us in the 1st of August, and then determine if we have to adjust from there.
Follow up, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. I mean, we know that, and this is budget related, but it's more a kind of looking crystal ball than specific to this document. We do know that properties are very hot in Billings. They've been selling at higher prices than the DOR actually assesses those. So what impact is that going to have on us as a city come down the road somewhere? I don't know. Nobody knows when this is going to go away, if it's going to continue, if those values are going to hold, or if they're going to crumble back with interest rates so low. So I know it's a speculative question, but it's relevant to where we go as a city in terms of our property values. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Joy. So I learned something the other week or two that I've probably been saying it wrong in the past, so I'll take an opportunity to correct it. The DOR, as we know, revalues properties on a biennial basis, and this is a revaluation year. So if you think about your individual property, they're going to revalue your home, and they're going to revalue it. They're going to give you a new value this July, but it's going to be based upon what the value of your home was on January 1st of 2020. So they already know what they're going to give, likely. They know what the value is that they're going to place upon your home, because they did that all during 2020. Then, right, what they're doing now is reviewing that data to make sure it's accurate, the assumptions they used were proper, and then they're going to send that data out to all the individual homeowners. So the increase in residential sales or the value that we were seeing in 2020 and currently are seeing in 21 and assume we'll see through the rest of this year, we won't realize that value until our next revaluation. So none of that increase is going to be on this current valuation. And that's where I was wrong. Before, I thought it was based upon the value as of January 21st, 2021, but it's a year prior. So we won't realize any of this growth really for another couple of years. So that's why your value of your home is always lagging behind what the DOR says it is versus what it probably really is.
So Andy, if I can follow up on that, when you made that 4.5% judgment, was that with the understanding that you had to look to January 1, 2020? So you're still confident in that number, or were you looking at some other data that makes you now question that 4.5% number?
I am still confident in that number. So I guess to answer that question, yes, I am still confident in that number. After learning that with the DOR, we spent some time looking it over, and they felt like I was conservative enough in my estimates that.
That's how the dice came up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Ewald Purington.
Sam was up first. So
Okay, Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. I had a question for Carla with regard to, one was retention. Sounds like you have several people that are retiring, so I guess that retention worked. But it was my understanding when I attended a meeting regarding state pension plans that for new hires, unless someone stays at least 5 years, benefits don't really kick in. And I think they're seeing that trend that that's not a driving force for some people. What are your estimations on moving forward with new hires, retention? And then I don't know if you have any ideas regarding the state pension plan where they're starting to see difficulties with that. I think the city might be involved in some of those future ideas. So if you could just comment on the retention and then the pension plans.
Councilmember Purington, as far as, you're absolutely correct on you have to be 5 years to be vested. If you don't stay 5 years, then the city's contribution goes away, okay? And you can withdraw your own contributions that you contributed. As far as retention, you know, I think it's just so competitive. It's so competitive right now for pay that it's difficult if somebody, you know, like an equipment operator, for instance, if they get a job that maybe pays them $1 or $2 somewhere else an hour, they go. And I do think if you can keep people 7 to 10, we have a pretty good chance of keeping them more longer term. And as far as, what was your question on the plans? Because I'm not in that discussion as far as our Impera plans go, the administration of them. I'm not at the table for those.
Oh, and it may not be, but it was my understanding, and Mary, I think you were at that meeting also. I thought it involved some of city employees with their pension plans.
Yeah, and I think just generally, Carla, where we stand with our pension plan, as you know, in the last legislature, there was some discussion going in. Tom McGilvery was going to drive that. I talked to him the other day. He said there really just wasn't much interest in this session, but potentially shoring up the pension, state pension plan. And Chris Kukulski's got his hand up too, so I would go to Chris and we'd come back to Carla.
He can help me.
So the piece I'd add, and Andy is always jump in here to help me if you think I'm coming off tracks. 3 different main components of the pension system for city employees. Actually, let me pre-state something before that, and I got the same question that actually this morning with the candidates or the interested council members. We are not a self-funded pension system for the city of Billings. So some cities in the country, I don't know, I'm not aware of any Montana ones, but you have some cities in the country who've been funding or own the liability of the pension system for their employees. That's not us. We're a part of the state system. That doesn't mean we're immune from issues, but it is a state PERS, Public Employee Retirement System, not just a city. On the police side and the fire side, generally speaking, very well funded. I don't recall in the past 24 years ever getting into issues of concern on actuarials relative to those pension funded systems. They're very well funded by us as an employer, by the employees, and by the state of Montana on those sides. For the rest of us, or public employees, that's a different scenario, and you consistently will hear actuarial reports that'll say either they're behind or they're catching up or where are they, and covering that overall liability. A few years ago, they made an adjustment. We as an employer adjusted our contribution by mandate statutorily, and the employees increased their adjustment. I think we're somewhere in the 7 point.
Yeah, employees are at 7.9 and employers at 8.
So I guess
6 or 8.7.
So I'm off. I'll say I round it to 8. Essentially, employees contribute 8, and we as the employer 8. And various actuarial reports will say that needs to be stronger. But that's kind of the general of the pension for our employees, and the state's employees, public employees.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmembers Ronning and Tricky. Oh, and I'm sorry, Councilmember Ewald. And Councilmember Ronning?
I just got a follow-up on that. Did you say there was 1,300 per council person?
1,300 on the training expenses. That's the number that is used to.
Per year?
1,300, I believe that's right, annually.
Okay, at the end of the year, that just rolls into the general fund, or what happens to it?
If it doesn't get spent, it would be a component of the reserve. So it doesn't go anywhere else. If it gets spent, it gets spent. If it doesn't, that's what's contributing. Like any other line item that doesn't get spent, that's contributing to the reserve in the end of unspent. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. So in alignment with that question about the reimbursement, do you know if the bill that was at the state legislature this year that was going to eliminate any city staff or paid lobbyists from lobbying state legislators, did that bill die? Did it pass? Where is it right now? Because I know that prior to COVID and prior to the state legislature allowing members of the public to testify via Zoom, I mean, I know I paid out of my pocket to go back and forth to Helena and stay overnight and lobby on different city items. I could see where that for future council members, if the option to not be able to interact via Zoom, and if the only option for municipalities is for the elected officials to be in Helena, that reimbursement would be significant.
Sure. I don't recall where that landed as far as there was talk. I think it was an amendment to the massive bill tied to the federal ARPA funding. I can tell you, I spoke with the sponsor of that bill because he used to work with me, Frank Garner, and got clarification that if that amendment succeeded, he was given the determination through their advisors that that would limit lobbying for ARPA expenditures. And none of it included elected officials. So the elected officials were not excluded from, but we staff or lobbyists like Amy and Greg on our behalf, they would not be able to, that would have been illegal if that made it through. I honestly don't recall if that amendment became a part of that statute or not. But I do remember, like I said, it was limited to ARPA fund use. There was a concern in the beginning from the league and from MACO, Montana Counties Association, that it was going to eliminate any of that communication and reimbursement.
Yeah,
so
thank you. And then I have one more question.
Okay.
So obviously, I'm going to advocate for a PIO, and I am hoping that we can see the budget with that back in. I think it's critical. I think, I've been saying it for 3.5 years. I think that position is absolutely critical to our city.
Thank you. Councilmember Tricky? No? Okay. Any other questions on that group before we go to parks? Chris?
sorry, I just had one comment. I wanted to just relay one component of the human resource part in increased investment in training. Whether we ultimately get to where it equates to full-time or the most efficient way is a full-time trainer, I just want to share this one example. You take the transformation in recreational marijuana. Reasonable suspicion is a very critical training element for any and all supervisors. Take alcohol. On a reasonable suspicion on alcohol, you can have a breathalyzer test and determine, through a process what's going on there. That's not an option on marijuana. That test doesn't give you the results of just what's going on right now. So it's just one example where we think there's a significant liability if our folks aren't well trained in understanding how to handle that, because you do have legal use, medical use, and then ultimately recreational use, and how that affects our organization and folks we have out in heavy equipment and all the various responsibilities. That's just one of the latest and the newest that we know we can't afford to say, oh, we just couldn't get to that for this year or next year. We'll get to it in a couple of years. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then to Parks and Recreation. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question for Carla. Is this this budget year will be the negotiation year for the contract terms? And
Yes, it is.
Did you budget a outside negotiator on this?
No, we're doing, the contract negotiations have begun. We've been at the table, actually Kevin and Carla and the team have been at the table with Teamsters pretty heavily, including tomorrow, I think, for all day. And the police contract, there was a 6-month extension to it. But the fire contract's a wage-only opener. So 2 of the 3 contracts expire at the end of this fiscal year, and all 3 of them get affected in the next fiscal year from July 1 to June 30.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Whitaker, I assume it's your presentation on parks.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll try to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, the fiscal year 2022 budget presentation will cover fiscal year 2021 accomplishments, major projects underway, community infrastructure investments, department overview, current challenges, department focus, and budget numbers. Fiscal year 21 significant accomplishments. The Castle Rock Master Plan has been completed. Phase 1 of Centennial Park has been completed, and the ribbon cutting and celebration is scheduled for June 5th at 12 noon. The new playground, the new Rose Park playground has been installed and open for use. Two tennis courts at Lillis Park were converted into 6 pickleball courts. An artificial turf field was constructed at Amon Park. A new restroom was installed at High Sierra Park. The irrigation system at North Park was replaced, and a portion of the road in Riverfront Park was paved. Fiscal year 21 significant operational accomplishments includes implementing a past management system for Rose Pool, updating our department website, creating a mobile app, operating Rose and South pools, and our summer camp program during a pandemic. The challenges that we faced from COVID-19 included difficulty recruiting seasonal staff, increased cleaning standards, operating at a reduced capacity for recreation programs and facilities, and the dramatic increase in usage of parks and trails. Major projects underway. Colson Park Phase 1. A playground and shelter at Terry Park. A new playground at Lillis Park. A new playground at Castle Rock Park. Infrastructure improvements at Poly Vista Park. Tennis courts at Central Park and a shelter at Optimus Park. We did receive a $147,420 LWCF grant to assist with the construction of the tennis courts at Central Park. The fiscal year 22 budget request includes funds to replace the playground at Arrowhead and North Parks, pave 2 parking lots at Optimus Park, infrastructure improvements at Poly Vista Park, replace the irrigation system at Ponderosa Park, replace the pool liner at Rose Pool, and to pave a portion of the road in Riverfront Park. Our Parks and Recreation team consists of 33 full-time employees and over 200 seasonals. In 2017, 91% of Billings households believe Parks and Recreation is an essential service, and 86% of Billings households have used a park during the past 12 months. If we did this survey today, the amount of Billings households who believe Parks and Recreation is an essential service would even be higher due to COVID-19. The Parks and Recreation Department is organized in 3 divisions: Parks, Recreation, and Administration. The Parks Division is responsible for park maintenance, forestry, and the Mountain View Cemetery. The Recreation Division is responsible for youth and adult recreation programs, aquatics, and senior services. The Administration Division is responsible for park planning and development, customer service, and community outreach. I would like to ask Mike Pigg, our Park Superintendent, to highlight the services of the Parks Division.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you can see from this map, all the green spaces is parkland that's managed by the division. It covers the whole city. We're from one edge to the other. The Parks Division is responsible for the maintenance of all the parks, and we have over 2,700 acres of parkland that is maintained by the Parks Division, kind of an even split between developed parkland and undeveloped parkland. Things like playground inspections and repairs, hauling of the trash, opening and closing the bathrooms every day. The department is made up of 12 equipment operators, 1 supervisor, and we try to hire about 50 seasonals every year. For the last 2 years, we've had a very difficult time attracting seasonals. This year, we're currently operating with 28 out of 50 positions funded. You can see that as you go through the city. If you look at the parks, you can tell that we're having an issue. Our weed sprayer is one of the people who we haven't been able to hire, and you'll see our dandelion population has exploded. That's just because we haven't been able to spray. We also don't have a trash truck operator, and so the trash cans aren't getting emptied as often as we'd like to. Just has straight to do with the fact that we don't have any seasonal staff. Trying everything we can to overcome that. The Forestry Division, they maintain the tree inventory of the city. So there's over 10,000 trees in the developed parkland. We do not count the trees in the undeveloped parks. We haven't inventoried those. So this is just in developed parks. It's a large task just to keep all the trees safe, pruned properly, even just inspected. They do an inspection of the trees, and we try to touch every tree once every 7 years. And so very busy staff. Last year, they were able to prune 1,200 trees. They're very busy there. They also take care of the natural areas. So they're responsible for trail maintenance like at Phipps Park and at Riverfront, and also noxious weeds.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh, I still have cemetery, Michael.
I'd like to ask Corey Thompson to highlight recreation services in the community.
Thank you, Michael. I'll let Mike Pigg finish up with the cemetery overview, and then I'll follow up with the recreation side of things.
I thought maybe you were going to take cemetery too, Corey. That would work. Cemetery, it's our inventory. It's 65 acres of very well maintained turf. Last year was kind of an interesting year with the COVID. We still maintained services all through the COVID, even though there was restrictions. We worked with the health officer. We did a lot of virtual services, which was kind of interesting to see. People holding cameras so they could zoom the services all across the country. It is also the oldest cemetery in Billings, so there's a very historic portion that is very interesting to walk down through, and they're very busy there right now getting prepared for Memorial Day. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to highlight the Recreation Division and keeping Billings active. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the recreation staff for the tremendous job they did over the past year, providing recreation programs for both youth and adult. You'll see that our registration numbers were slightly lower than last year. A lot of that was due to the COVID protocols, the health and safety standards that we had to follow, and a lot of that was due to lower capacities for the programs we were able to provide. Currently, we're seeing a tremendous increase in registrations for the upcoming summer. We're about 86% ahead of 2019. So prior to last year, we are seeing, again, just a tremendous need in our community for the programs we're providing. Along with that comes a concern. As Mike had mentioned, we are seeing a lack of applications for a lot of our seasonal jobs, our summer camp counselors, and our lifeguards. So that's one concern. We're working with our staff on some contingency plans to make sure we've got coverage for those camps coming up this summer. I also like to highlight real quickly our fantastic partnership we have with School District 2. We can continue to see a nice increase in our youth sports programs. Moving into our strike zone batting cages at Stewart Park, that facility is open. We're there for the Little Leaguers that are out playing right now and the adult softball that's just getting started. To go into our aquatic facilities, you'll see down towards the bottom, last year we were open throughout the entire summer, unless we had inclement weather. We still had well over 300 kids participate in our Learn to Swim program with the American Red Cross standards. Nearly 40,000 people visited our pools, and we saw a nice increase in our concession sales. We're excited to implement this summer our new pass management system. Due to COVID last year, we held off doing the season passes for families and for individuals. And finally, I also like to thank the tremendous job our senior services staff has done at the community center. We were obviously shut down for the early part of COVID. We did reopen in June of last year. Strict protocols. We provided a number of wellness and fitness classes. And what we saw was a 37% increase through the second part of last year. We continue to see a nice increase in our participation numbers. And we're very excited to have the Adult Resource Alliance back with our meal site reopened 5 days a week.
Thank you, Corey. A vital part of our mission is engaging our community through events and volunteerism. Last year, we had over 400 volunteers working with the department to improve our parks. The number is down over 50% from previous years due to spring volunteer projects and events being canceled due to COVID. We have 4 formal agreements with several informal agreements with organizations to provide recreation opportunities in Billings. We have formal agreements with the Downtown Exchange Club to manage the Par 3 golf course, with the Billings Mustangs to manage Gillard Park, with the Billings Softball Association to manage softball at Stewart Park, and the Amon Park Development Council to manage soccer at Amon Park. Here's a list of our community partners who hold events in the park. In 2019, we helped facilitate over 1,000 events, from birthday parties to symphony in the park. Parks and Recreation Department focus, our focus this coming fiscal year will be to properly track maintenance operations and plan for life cycle replacement of park amenities. We have purchased and will implement City Works work order management system. Our 2017 Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan recommended that we implement a work order management system to increase efficiencies and improve operations. The City Council priorities and our 2017 Parks and Rec plan guided the development of our recommended CIP and O&M budgets. The 2017 Comprehensive Master Plan identified an indoor recreation facility as our department's top priority. Our current challenges includes a lack of indoor recreation facilities, a lack of athletic fields, not being able to recruit enough seasonal employees. Mike Pigg touched on how it's impacting services, graffiti and vandalism, and transients in parks. Our Parks and Recreation Department is a small city department, and our budget is only 2% of the city's proposed budget. Where does Parks and Rec money come from? 30% comes from the general fund, 33% comes from PD1, 15% comes from fees and charges, 12% comes from park maintenance districts, and 3% comes from park special funds. Where does the money go? 78% of our budget goes to O&M, and 22% goes towards capital projects. This slide was not in the presentation that was sent to City Council this morning. We are recommending that we do an inflationary increase in 9 of our 36 park maintenance districts and in Park District 1. Our Park District 1 assessment will be 1.4% of taxable value. And the Parks and Rec team is here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, 7:21, council, we'll see how many questions, if we can wrap this up, and before we take a break, if we get into something, we may have to take a break and then come back with questions. Questions for Mike or other park staff? Councilmember Purington.
Mike, if you wouldn't mind to repeat that last slide that you said we didn't have, what you had for PD1 and PMDs.
Mike, as you're pulling that up, I'll have Andy also afterwards, if he can talk about the PD1 and the 1.4 and how we're approaching that number based on the direction from you guys from last year.
Okay, what Councilmember Purington, what you see here is 9 of our 36 PMDs. We're recommending an inflationary increase in those PMDs. And it sounds like the city administrator will explain the taxable value increase.
Actually, I'm going to have Andy do that second part. And then I'd also, Mike, is it correct? So these increases on the 9 park maintenance districts, so recognize there's a difference. There's Park District 1 for the whole city, then there are 36 park maintenance districts, neighborhoods. We try to make sure that that assessment is really in the sweet spot of covering the cost and in sometimes saving up for the replacement of equipment at that particular park. So I'm assuming these adjustments are directly tied to we're starting to fall a little bit behind, so we want to increase those some inflationary and avoid big spikes when we go to replace a playground set or something of that nature. So that's why some of these are going up and not all of them. Some of them we feel pretty good about what we're bringing in as revenue is keeping up with covering cost. Mike, am I pretty safe there?
Yes, Chris, you're right on. I would just also like to add the major driver and the inflationary increases are related to the cost of water and electric. Whenever the city raises their rates, it increases the rates in the PMDs too.
And thank you, Mike, and I'll have Andy talk about the 1.4.
Yeah, so the Park District 1 budget is built on actually no increase in Park District 1 assessment amount. It would It would increase based upon taxable value growth, though. So the current assessment amount is 1.409% of taxable value. The budget is based upon, and the current recommendation is that council set that same 1.409 whatever percent of taxable value. So there would be a growth in revenue, but it would be the same percentage that we would tax, if that makes sense.
So if you recall, prior to last year, we had a cap number. The philosophy or the approach was we're gonna collect $2 million for Park District 1, or that was changed to $3 million. And that was consistently done for the great amount of the 10, 11 years it existed. By changing it to the percentage and keeping that consistent percentage, at least we're catching some inflation because the community is growing. So at least we're picking up some of that, but it isn't increasing the assessment per individual amount. That would determine their taxable value, right?
Yeah, I would make one correction though, Chris. It has always been a percentage of taxable value.
Correct.
Council said we want it to be $2 million. We figured out what that percentage was. So the assessment has always been a percentage of taxable value if you go look at the resolutions. We're just recommending that you keep that percentage the same this year as it was last year.
And I'm sorry if I could, thank you, Andy. What would happen in the flat collection is every year you'd save a little bit of money as a taxpayer. Your bill would go down a little bit for Park District 1 because the growth was picking up that flat amount of $2 or $3 million. So this is the proposed way to get some inflation to cover increased cost without being sensitive to the overall impact until we get into those tougher discussions, candidly, in these next 1, 2, 3 years or many months about how are we going to fund ultimately parks maintenance and park development, be it through the reconsideration of Park District 1 or a mill levy conversation as mandated kind of in the statutory changes that were made. So
Andy, that 1.4% translates to what dollar amount approximately? Presumably about 3 million plus 3 or 4%?
It would be 4.5%. The same assumption there is that we think the taxable base is going to grow by 4.5%.
Okay, Councilmember Neese and Ronning.
So, Chris, what you're saying by keeping it at 1.4, you're saying that we're increasing the Parks District 1 by 4.5% because that's what the assumption is. However, taxable value increases 6%, then we've just increased PD1 by 6%. Or if it only increases 3%, we've increased it by 3%. So I don't know if I agree with that, and I would check. And I began that the state made some changes, and they were all over the board on what they changed. And I thought there was a cap of 3 or 3.5% that you could do anyway. I don't know if that was the final bill or not. So I would double check that to make sure that we're not going to violate state law by keeping it at 1.4, because then if we did increase it 4.5%, we'd be in violation of the state law. So I think when we started talking about the inflation factor, I think we should keep it at what we said, the inflation. We would increase it in inflation factor. And I would like to make that recommendation to change it to keep it at that inflation number, and whatever that may be, so we're not there's no question about whether or not it's we increase our taxable value by 3% or 6%. Let's just do it whatever that inflation number we had talked about the first time. I think it was at 3%. 3%. We did, and just do that. So I would make a motion to direct staff to do that at 3%, not to keep it at 1.4.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion.
Okay, and there was a second by Councilmember Ewald. I guess my comment there is it's based on a lot of speculation about the legislation. We don't even know what. I don't mind staff going back and thinking about this and looking at it, but I guess I'd be a little concerned that we might be acting prematurely. But Chris, you've got a comment?
I think I keep leaning on Andy here to explain, and maybe we want to come back in the discussion on the 7th. Remember, we got tonight, this critical, I want us to have the deeper the better. Then we also had the 7th. I think there are a bunch of assumptions being made here about how the 1-4 works. And I want you to keep in mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Andy, if you take as an example, and they're a little bit apples and oranges, but we have lots of assessment districts, right? So take streets. You don't say we want to increase our collection by the inflation amount, therefore you take growth, I mean the new construction in town adds, as the liability adds, there's more streets in town to take care of, in this case, more parks to take care of, in addition to an inflationary hit that we see each year. So I would encourage you to not just look at the added growth percent. I think both of those are important things to be conscientious of. And I'm not saying that very well, I don't think. But Andy, I think, well, I want you guys to make sure you understand, and I know you do too, precisely what the effect is of whatever adjustment you decide to make, whether it's a flat percentage of increased revenue or it's using the same calculator, therefore not changing what my assessment is, but not limiting us by the new construction that's built and new parks that are added to the system and responsibilities as well.
So if I could address that.
Go ahead, Councilmember Ewell.
I understand what you're saying.
Sorry, Councilmember Bernice.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I understand what you're saying, but I think that by doing a percentage of what you know, and this is budget, so you're planning a budget, so now you know what the exact amount is. If you do a 1.4%, we're not going to know until the taxable value comes out in October what we really are planning for. So I think if we're doing a budget the number, the percentage, as we've always had. And so I am, again, as far as what the legislator's done, we can sure have Gina look into that and see if that's a problem. But I think it'll be easier for us to just put the hard number in there and that they can partially budget based upon that number and we move down the road.
Absolutely. Whatever the direction is, I just want to make sure I understand it. And part of that would be, is your goal to set the number that we collect? Is your goal to reduce or not reduce what each individual homeowner pays towards Park District 1? There's a series of things I think you could give us some direction on that would help guide us, and we can do some homework and research for your June 7th conversation so that you can be, I think, better understanding of what the impacts are so you can give us clear direction, would be my thought.
Okay, Councilmember Boyd, Councilmember Ewell.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, maybe it would help if we had an example of a typical house, whatever that price is now. Give me an example of what happens if we raise it 3%, if we do some scenario rather than these arbitrary numbers. So I'm used to dealing in dollars and cents, and I think it'd be easier for everyone else maybe.
Certainly agree. It'd be nice to see this in writing. It's really hard, to understand something without it being spelled out with options and scenarios. Councilmember Ewell?
When this was passed, I thought that the $2 million was set up as an assessment and it couldn't be called a tax. So if you're going to go that way, now it then becomes a tax and not an assessment. And that was not the way that it was set up, I believe. And that was one of the big arguments over the whole thing. And I know I went in and talked to Andy a year or so ago, and he goes, well, we use the assessment and then we figure backwards. And I go, well, wait a minute, that's a tax. He goes, well, no, not really, because we figure backwards and come up with an assessment. But if you're doing it this way, now this becomes a tax and not an assessment.
I would just say, if I could, that the assessment method hasn't changed since the creation of the district. So whether I'm using the wrong terminology out or tax or assessment, we're not proposing, I'm not suggesting we change the method of what we're assessing and how we're assessing it. And hearing you clearly, yes, clarity of examples, as well as having you see what, to the best of our ability, with the estimate as to the dollar of what the collection impact is by using the same assessment amount anticipated with 4.5% growth versus if you have some other direction or preference of capping the increase at not more than 3% of what the collection was from the year before.
Okay, and obviously this has to be consistent with whatever state law and the resolutions creating the district in the first place. All of that would have to be looked at. Councilmember Shaw? There wasn't anybody. Councilmember Ronning, or Councilmember Ronning, Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I'm assuming we're done with that part of the conversation.
Well, we haven't voted on the motion, so.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so Councilmember Shaw, did you have something relevant to the motion?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say, I definitely do not feel like I have enough information to make this decision tonight. I'm willing to consider it, but if we're going to vote on this tonight, I will not support it because I don't feel like I have the full information. I need the examples that exactly what Councilmember Boyd had asked for, so I would ask that we wait until we can get that information. But otherwise, if we're going to vote now, my answer will be no. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we move on to a vote on the motion if there isn't anything else pressing by council.
After discussion, I'll withdraw my motion.
You will, okay, the motion goes away. So, and I think.
As long as the second concurs.
Yeah, which was Councilmember Ewald?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion goes away, but I would still suggest it's an important. I'm sorry, Councilmember Ewald, you said that you did withdraw your second?
Yes.
Oh, yes, okay. But maybe staff could give us a couple paragraphs on what options are, what it might look like, what recommendations you'd have, how it would translate in real dollars to an average size home, all those issues that we've just been talking about. Okay, moving on. Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. And this is for Mike Whitaker. Two questions, Mike. One is, could you share with us what the relationship is with the Parks Department and the Parks Foundation? We never really ever hear about the Parks Foundation that's out there and the work that they're doing. If there's the ability to share with us what they're doing, that would be great. And then the other question I have for you is just what you mentioned in your presentation, the high demand for indoor facilities. And I would say I hear quite often from residents of Billings the frustration of the lack of indoor aquatic facilities, especially with Great Falls and Bozeman and Missoula having very new and updated aquatic facilities, and Billings really lacking in that. So where is the discussion with SBURA on where we're at with the rec center? Those are my two questions.
Well, Councilmember Ronnie, I'll start off with the Parks Foundation. We have an informal relationship with the foundation. They met at our facility until COVID-19, but we still have at least someone from our department to attend their meetings. So we do work closely together on projects. For example, I think one of their top projects right now is raising funds for the playground at Centennial Park, but they also have a whole list of projects they're raising funds for. And that list is on their website. I think you can even go to the website and contribute through the website.
It's called something different.
As it relates to the rec center project, I was just in conversation with Jim Tevlin today. I will be meeting with our subcommittee, or myself and Corey Thompson will be meeting with the subcommittee, I think Monday of next week. I think that's probably the 24th. So we are going to be a part of that subcommittee to discuss the rec center.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Other questions for Park staff? Councilmember Purington?
I just wanted to make a comment too. What is the Parks Foundation? They have a new name. What is it?
Partners for Parks.
Yeah. Okay. So I did have someone in my ward call me and ask what was going on with the Parks Foundation, and I knew that they were rebranding themselves and everything. And so whenever you have this list on the one slide about connecting with the community, are these just people that used our parks, or are these people that actually contribute to the Parks Foundation? I think if there was that outreach in the community, there would be partners for the parks, because that's what this gentleman was saying. He said, I just can't believe that we don't have more of the private sector working with the Parks Department in getting some of the, whether it's a playground, benches, whatever it is. So do you have any comment about how you're trying to partner with the community in some of these efforts?
Well, Councilmember Puritan, we work directly with those groups, and we're constantly working with them to help them accomplish their goals. I think one example is the Friends of Billings Dog Park. We work directly with them in establishing a dog park at Centennial Park. As everyone knows here, they contributed over $100,000 towards the off-leash dog area at the park. One amenity that they paid for was the fencing. So we do work directly with that list of people. Mike Pigg, you work with them closely too. Do you have anything to add?
We work very closely on a number of issues, like they're gathering funding for the playground at Castle Rock Park, the playground at Centennial. So we meet with them on a regular basis to discuss the different projects, and we find the foundation has actually increased their activity over the last year or so. I think the rebranding has helped them. As far as the list that Michael showed, the partners that we have, those are groups that either hold an event on our parks or a partner like Little League, where we provide them the facilities and a lot of the maintenance that goes on. Amon Park Development Council, they do the scheduling for soccer, and we provide all the maintenance. So we work very closely with those people to either facilitate their events or their sports.
Follow, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
And one other question that I had, on your comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that was done in September of 2017. And I think even last year we were asking for an update. If you could update what has been done with the parks, and then what needs to be done moving forward, and then adjusting some of those dollar amounts that you have listed for whatever it is in those parks that needs to be done.
Councilmember Puritan, a master plan is usually good for 5 to 10 years. I agree with you. We should look at updating that master plan with the next couple of years. But as relates to construction costs, it's all over the page right now, especially with COVID. I think everyone understands the supply chain right now for construction is really impacting costs. But I definitely agree with you. That plan does need to be updated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional questions, Councilmember Ewalt and Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Taking off on Councilmember Puritan's comments about private help with parks. We got a deal with Oasis last year sometime, and we leased that park to them for $1 a year. It would be good for some of you people to drive up and see just how much they've done to that park. And that's all been through Oasis, Better Billings Foundation, donations, and they did it without any other help other than getting out and getting a few blisters and things like that. But it's a pretty awesome start to what they're doing up there, and it's open to the public. You drive up there, there's kids always on that basketball court playing basketball, and they've got the new sidewalk in with all these, I don't know what, xylophones and all kinds of crap that kids can go and pound on and make music. And it's just a really nice feature for the Heights when we have a hard time getting stuff done up there, and it's a really great thing. They can go swimming and they can go play on all the other stuff too. So if you get a chance, go up and just see how much they've turned that fairground into something that's really good.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Deese and Chris Kukulski.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, in the budget, is there any dollars to update the parks website? Because even as Councilmember talked, I went and searched the Billings Park website about basketball courts, and there's nothing there at the Oasis. I went and clicked on the Castle Rock Master Plan, and it pulls up the old master plan that was never approved by council. I looked for dog parks, and it lists the Centennial Park, but not the High Sierra Dog Park. So it seems to be the parks website is way out of date. Is there anything in here that you're actually going to do to update the website so it's current?
Councilmember Neese, good question. There are funds in there to update our website. Even though we refreshed it last year, we need a update. And yes, we will be moving forward in this coming fiscal year to update our website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Kukulski and Councilmember Triki.
I just had briefly on the comment about private sector partnerships, as both of you talked about. We would always take more, but please understand there are dozens of partnerships out there. So this city, frankly, relies very, very heavily on private and donations to build out its park system, has and will continue to. So I think anybody who is thinking that we're not isn't, maybe our communication needs to continue to improve to let people know, just as the example that Councilmember Ewald gave, that is a private-public partnership between donors and citizens and the city, and it's happening all over the city continuously.
Thank you. Councilmember Triki?
Yeah, Director Whitaker. Could you talk a little bit about what it costs, what kind of resources it requires for your department to be involved in partnerships, and whether or not there are budgetary limits to the number of private-public partnerships that you can be involved in at any given time?
Councilmember Cherokee, it does take a lot of time to manage partnerships. Like I said in my presentation, we have four formal partnerships. That does consume a lot of staff time to manage those partnerships. But we're always open and partnering with the private sector, try to make things happen. But it does require time to implement and monitor.
Thank you.
Thank you. And while we're on this topic, I might just put in a pitch that if the PIO is raised from the dead, zombie-like, as I've advocated in the past, that we give some consideration to making part of that job description a city development officer, somebody who's used to going out and asking people to contribute to parks. Once they do contribute, making sure they're thanked properly. If they want to see something done in a certain way, that they can act as a liaison with staff. That also might be a way that you could leverage that position and actually turn it, I don't want to say profitable, but recoup a lot of the cost of that kind of position. That's just my 2 cents. Councilmember Boyette?
It's way past the 7:30 mark, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are we ready to take a break? Okay, Chris Kukulski, last word, and we'll come back after the break and see if there's any final questions, and then move to our final item. Councilmember, or go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, thank you for the opportunity. I'll be brief. One, on me, that we didn't focus on the 1.4%. So we'll get that correction, so there's no ambiguity there. I want to take a minute to share. Look at those projects. It's pretty frustrating. I could use some other words. What we defended in Helena, comments made about hands and cookie jars, us not spending Park District 1 money where it was intended. We didn't. We can't by law. And if you look at the project lists that have been done because of Park District 1, what I'm told, folklore or not, this city was shutting down, tearing out playgrounds, bathrooms, and other things regularly. I think it's very impressive, the kind of projects that are getting done all over the city with Park District 1 money, with PMDs, and with partnerships. And it makes our neighborhoods more valuable and more interested for buyers. So I just don't, there's a lot of stuff there getting done. We always can be doing better, but it was a very frustrating experience to have some people implying that we're not using Park District 1 assessments to improve parks. It's not accurate. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's 7:50. Let's come back 8 o'clock. If there's any wrap-up questions on this item, we'll take them, but then we'll move on to a general fund recap. I didn't want to cut off all questions for our Parks and Rec staff. Are there any other questions for Mike or staff before we go on to general fund recap?
I got a question.
Councilor Rewald.
Thank you. Well, a while back when we did that study on parks and land and water or whatever it was, and they said that the national average is $6,200 an acre that they spend on parks, and in Billings we spend $3,200 an acre. So Lutheran Park, which is just down the street from me a little ways, is 0.93 acres or something like that, and it's assessed at $8,000 an acre. So not only is it way above what the city of Billings spends, but it's above the national average. And the only thing that's there is like 8 or 10 trees and 1 picnic table. There's not even a garbage can, nothing. And it's $8,000 for less than an acre per year.
Is that, would you like Mike Whitaker to comment?
Explanation, please.
Okay, Mike Whitaker, Lutheran Park, small park in the Heights.
Well, Mayor, I'll ask Mike Pick to respond to that because he handles the day-to-day maintenance out there.
And let me throw as Mike, before Mike jumps in, if you just pull any acre, any 1 acre out of anything or any one, I think you're gonna find a higher cost for that one than when you're using, and I say the averages are good references, but I would always be sensitive to thinking we need to be spot on that reference, above it or below it. I would refer it as a reference, not as thou shalt be. And certainly we don't set the assessment system up that thou shalt be collecting X or performing at that dollar level. Thanks, Mike.
Sure, Mike Pick?
Yeah, so all I can answer to that is what we do there. We do mow, we do water, we do street trim, we do spray the weeds. There's a trash can, we place trash cans in there clean, so there will be a trash can placed back in. There's picnic tables in there. I can't say it's heavily used, but it does get the same amount of maintenance activity that all the other parks do. One of the problems we have with those parks is the long distance of travel that we have to go to. It takes us a long time. I have to move staff from the VOC all the way out there to the Heights with a mower, with string trimmers, with all their equipment. Travel time kills us when we go to the Heights, same as it kills us when we go to Ironwood. There's a long distance of travel there, costs us a lot of travel time. That money, that travel time is built back to those PMVs.
Okay, thank you. No economies of scale on a 1 acre park.
Follow up, Mayor.
Okay.
Please. More than double the city average, and we don't see any problem with it. And I had to talk really hard to get it from $12,000 a year down to the $8,000 a couple of years ago. So then it was really out of line.
Okay. You may want to follow up if anybody has more information on that particular part. Any other questions for park staff?
Sean Brown.
I can't see. Are you?
He's waving. He's waving.
I'm waving.
Yeah.
Oh, you're frozen. No, you're frozen.
He's frozen.
Yeah. You're absolutely motionless.
That is very realistic.
Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, for a while now. The question that I have is on these park districts, are we adjusting any of the costs for maintenance and stuff when we're going to, can't remember what we're calling it, natural park land or whatever, where we're not doing mowing and things like that, probably restricted to spraying. A lot of them don't have picnic tables, they don't have garbage cans. Well, I hope they have garbage cans, but are we adjusting those maintenance costs? Because I'm assuming these PDs cover maintenance costs and maybe a little to start stocking up for improvements.
So please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of the park maintenance districts, there's a direct correlation to the services at the district. So if they're a area that doesn't get mowed wouldn't be charged for mowing, or it's mowed twice a year, that's a different method than if it's we have in that description at least 3 different areas of maintenance standards for parks. Mike Pigg, can you kind of talk about and answer Councilmember Brown's question?
Sure, Councilmember Brown. So first off, we don't have any natural areas that are a PMD, so there's no direct cost or correlation between that. But how we bill a PMD is their time is tracked directly. So when a staff member goes out to a PMD, they track their time, and then at the end of the day, they write their time down on a sheet, how many hours or time they spent at every park, and then the activity that they did. So if they string trimmed or mowed, they would write that in there, and then we would track their time. That comes back, we take those spreadsheets, and we generate an invoice for that PMD. So their time is tracked directly. So there is a tracking mechanism for that. But if we only mow, once a month on a PMD, then they would only get billed for that time because it is a direct track of that time.
Okay, so it's directly related to the labor that we're putting in.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just noticed everybody is frozen on my screen. Unless Councilmember Yakovich has been drinking that same bottle of water for the last 8 minutes.
Again, that's true.
Yeah, so I'm going to look up there and hopefully my computer will come back to life one of these days. Any other questions before we go to the next item, general fund recap?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Purington.
just as a follow-up to the comment, Mike Pigg, that you're saying the travel time going to the Heights. And I thought there was some discussion when we were talking about Castle Rock having some sort of a building or something where you do have a location, a second location for mowers or something else, so that you don't have all that travel time all the time, which makes sense to me. Are you looking in that direction?
Councilmember Puritan, I'll respond to that. Adjacent to Castle Rock Park, we do rent a couple of the storage facilities out there to store some of our equipment out there, but we can't store everything out there. So we do have limited storage out there. The new master plan has a small storage facility proposed, but everything goes back to funding.
So you were right in recalling that the plan calls for a couple of satellite locations to better equip and not have so much travel time to the west end, east end, etc.
Has there been a cost analysis as to what that would be to buy something that's already there as opposed to the travel time and all of that? Has that been analyzed at all?
Mike, can you answer?
Councilmember Puritan, it was analyzed when the comp plan was developed, and the comp plan recommended that we build a satellite facility in the Heights and another satellite facility in the West End. By doing that, we would increase our capacity by 2 full-time employees, but through the reduction of what's called windshield time. So if we could locate 2 more satellite facilities, we could greatly improve our efficiencies.
We've not looked that closely in my time here into
I'm just thinking that there would be more availability of empty space rather than building something, because
Sure.
then you have to purchase land and building right now would not be a good start.
Councilmember Dees?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, it's surprising to find that you charge the different parks based upon travel time, because I'm assuming you're probably up there doing some Castle Rock Park and some of the other city parks that are not PMDs, and yet now you're charging them for the distance from wherever your main housing is. I would think that the only time spent at the park and not travel time to that park would be assessed to that PMD. So I'm a little troubled hearing that you're assessing it because the Heights is way up there and so far away from your facility. So I would hope that you would try and adjust that and not assess, whether it's way on the west end or way down south somewhere, or as you don't assess them the travel time, but just the time they're spent on site doing the maintenance of the park.
And we can look at the various methods of what's charged. At the end of the day, I mean, at a high level, you're going to pay that cost one way or the other. Maybe the more equitable way to do it is you want it through Park District 1, or you want it through the general fund versus the park maintenance districts. But that cost is going to need to be covered somewhere. So the methodology of that, maybe we're in the right spot, or it could be adjusted to something different.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's got to be paid somewhere, but I think the P&D shouldn't be paying. That's just because they're having to be farther away. They should be paying for their time. If I hire a landscaper, they're going to charge me. I'm not going to charge me the travel time. They're going to charge me the time they spend, at my house doing whatever they do. If I hire a landscaper, so.
Okay, I'll be back here in just a minute. Are we done? Let's move on to general fund recap. And is that
Andy's
Andy?
got a slide deck here we're going to use to help walk us through the conversation.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Don't think I shared this one. I've been having internet problems as well, so if this one goes down, we'll just have to ad lib. This is just, now you've seen all the general fund departments last night and tonight, so we wanted to kind of recap for you where we're at. And what I have up here is the general fund. The left column is the general fund as it was in your proposed budget. Since we put that out, we were aware that we forgot to include the paralegal, and so our recommendation is that that be added to the general fund legal department, bringing the total budget for the general fund from 53.6 million to 53.7 million. So when we come back on June 7th, just want you to be aware that that'll be where we will be starting from, is a general fund budget of 53.7 million. This is that same information, just shown by department rather than by personal services, O&M, etc. So again, all 110,000 in the legal department. What you have here is a pie chart showing the percentage broken down by department. I've combined public safety and general fund together because they are so financially interdependent that it should be viewed as one fund for purposes of this discussion, I think. This is all expenses except for the transfer between those two funds. You see a large amount in that non-departmental. It's unique this year, and that's the $11.6 million transfer for public safety. I'm sorry, for the Law and Justice Center. If we take all of the one-time expenses out and look at just ongoing for that same information, that's what this chart is. I put in boxes all the ones that are public safety related, and that totals 83%. So 83% of the general fund and public safety funds is for public safety. So I think it's really important to realize that a significant amount of your dollars here are for public safety. Here's again, the FTEs being requested, either wholly or partially funded by the general fund. Total 5, added in the paralegal here, that's how we get to 5. 3.5 in the legal department. The additional hours, I guess it's about a half FTE for deputy city clerk, and then 1 code enforcement supervisor. This fund here, or this chart here, the red line is expenses, green line is revenue, giving you some history on where we've been, revenue and expense. This is all revenue and expense in the general fund and public safety. And then the bar at the bottom is your ending fund balance. And what you see, obviously, is last year in the current fiscal year, we received a significant amount of revenue relative to our expenses, and that's because of the CARES Act, but it drove up our fund balance quite a bit. And then for FY22, we're proposing spending a large portion of that down, and those are in the one-time expenses for fire station, the 1.5 million for the fire station, some additional for maintenance dollars in the fire stations you heard about last night, and then of course 11.6 million for Law and Justice Center. If we back out those one-time expenses and look at just ongoing, we still have expenses higher than revenue. That difference is about $1.3 million, which I think we showed you last night as part of the gap that would be filled with the public safety levy. So how do we get to $1.3 million? We started with an imbalance of about 570. Were you going to take over here, Chris? Or is this? Okay. Started with a balance of about $575,000 after the successful passage of last year's public safety levy. We're assuming tax growth of 4.5%, which is around $1.5 million. Then we've also included cost of living adjustments, insurance expense, IT facility charges, some of the additional staffing that you saw, increases to fuel and fleet, and then just what I'll call payroll increases that are kind of outside the cost of living. Those are contracted people who are stepping up as they're newer employees moving through the steps, totaling about $1.3 million.
So kind of council some of the topics of discussion that we thought were we kind of plant out here. What's missing? So of the conversations of the recent months and years that we've been working together, the public information officer or public information position, again, is not because I don't believe that it would make a substantial improvement and impact. Selfishly, most in my communications with you, but also our organizations, not with just you, the public. But what I did when we got down to really the final cuts is I really tried to focus on what things had a direct impact to the public safety issue. The one primary exception to that on the FTE count was the partial position relative to getting ourselves to 2 full-time positions in the clerk's office. The other ones all have a direct tie to public safety except that one. And I just see that as a deficiency that we just can no longer go without having 2 FTEs there in the clerk's office. There were several deputy fire marshal and logistics in the fire department. Frankly, until we are in the recruitment process, well, in fact, we're down, as you are aware, we're down to 2 finalists for fire chief. Chief Rash is retiring next month. Before adding and adjusting things there, I would like the new chief to be a part of those decisions. So those were requests that were made, and some of that work is going on, and it's being impacted and is impacting schedules and overtime and things like that. But those were some of the last cuts I made as well. That paralegal was just flat out, as I said earlier, that was a mistake on my part. In fact, ideally, that paralegal position should have been in a budget amendment in this last quarter of this year before we made a commitment for June 1 to start the full-on body camera program, because I would have liked to, it have been an easier conversation directly tied to that program, that component's there. So we fixed that in where we are today. And without a question, we, as was pointed out, we didn't repeat it tonight because you just saw it not just a few months ago. The status of parks maintenance overall, and you recall from that facilities plan, there is a need for more park staff in order to keep up with the maintenance schedule and needs. And each year we do continue to add some responsibilities there. So frankly, that's not in this. I didn't propose an increase to Park District 1 beyond an inflationary component or that discussion, even though when we get into what are we doing in the next many months about parks funding, that's going to need to be a part of that. Yes, you could say, no, you know what, we want to stop waiting. We need to make those investments now. You'd need to give that feedback, and we would show you what does it cost an additional Park District 1 assessment to add those resources to start catching up on those maintenance side of things. What changes to the general fund public safety budget do you guys want made? I mean, tonight we do have again June 7th to focus on that discussion, but any feedback you give us helps us leading up to that to have a more comprehensive discussion then. So anywhere you want to go there tonight, and how to address additional resources, use of reserve. Basically, this $1.3 million imbalance today, I mean, essentially you can use reserves to fund that. If with the public safety levy discussion, based on what we talked about last night, that may make that a situation where we know we've got a plan, just like we did a year ago. We had that plan to go to the voters. They said yes. We can, filling the gap with reserves in the short term, I don't think is there's nothing wrong with that strategy. What I've always kind of preached to you is I don't like using that as a long-term strategy for operational expenses. I'd rather be balanced on operational than count on using reserves long-term. Public safety levy, obviously we got some great direction last night, so we will work on both the feedback you gave us on options, but what that may look like, we'll bring that to you for June 14th. Park District 1 we talked a little bit about, and at some point we will have to, between Park District 1 into the near future or a park levy, the legislature does, the legislative actions, I think, force us to go back and have that conversation again, whether it's with this council or the next council, about whether Park District 1 is the best long-term strategy for operational maintenance or a parks mill levy is separate from the conversation about parks bonds and parks investments. So just some topics we wanted to kind of put out there to be thinking of. Your call as to whether you want to get into any of them tonight or just be thinking about them between now and the June 7th discussion. But it's really important on June 7th we know where we want to go, so that on June 28th everybody's advertised, the public's all fully aware, and we know where we're heading on June 28th.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I don't know if anybody probably can't see me. It looks like I've been dropped off the off, but let's try to define where we want to go this evening, and maybe Councilmember Brown has some wisdom, and Councilmember Ronick.
Yeah, I had a two-part question, I think, on Park District 1 and the park levy. I know that we're looking at possibly running our public safety levy prior to the November elections for city council. What would be a reality of running almost a replace type of a levy for Park District 1, kind of like what we did for public safety levy in that time frame, in that November during the city council elections? We give them plenty to talk about during their debates.
Is it possible? Of course it is absolutely possible. From a practical standpoint, think about all the presentations and meetings and conversations we had a year ago. I think you just doubled that, because you're gonna need to educate the community. We can't advocate, but we can educate, and we will need to educate people on what they're being asked to consider. My first gut reaction to that is, oh, please, I would like it to be sooner rather than later, like spring. I don't think we should wait years. I think there should be months, but I'd at least get one of them done, educated, voted on, and concluded, and then start the next one rather than running them parallel. But that's ultimately your guys' call, and it's a matter of what we're all going to do here, like you just experienced a year ago, as to what we were doing with 50, 60, 70 presentations in the community to answer questions and educate them. And then I'm sorry, one last piece is I would expect or hope we would have community groups who would take on fundraising, all the private stuff that we can't do relative to promotion. So those groups need to, I would be thoughtful of those groups having the opportunity to play that role, to afford us the opportunity to be successful versus just kind of tossing it all at once.
Okay, Chris, there's a lot here. Is there something that you want to focus our discussion on first, or I'll just open it up for council and we'll kind of bounce from item to item, but was there any specific issue between now and June 7 you really want us to weigh in on? We've addressed a lot in the public safety levy, of course.
Yep.
That's priority one, but
And actually, please understand this: when we put this together, we didn't know we'd be as far along as we are today from last night. So that discussion gave a lot of direction and put a lot of parameters around where we're going, for sure. So I don't think we don't have to spend another 15 minutes, hour chatting about this stuff. It really is, if you think from a policy perspective, I really would like Andy, you to bring us this or that so we can, and clearly we got some information on parks.
I'd recognize Councilmember Ronning and maybe somebody else had their hand up before, Councilmember Tricky. So Councilmember Ronning and Tricky.
Thank you. So I'm going to again advocate for the PIO, and the reason I feel so strongly about this, mainly, well, for a lot of reasons, but we've heard so far from almost every single presenter in the last 2 nights about recruitment, retention, being able to get people to fill jobs. We've heard about, especially when it comes to parks, lack of funding for different things. A public information officer is an investment in our city at a relatively low cost for a big gain, especially when we've had that discussion that the job would also be considered a development director per se, or someone who helps write grants. What we hire in the city are professionals and experts in these areas. One individual, if I'm remembering correctly, in past presentations, it was around $150 or something like that $1,000 for one person. If they're bringing in, if this professional who has this experience is bringing in $500,000 toward parks or toward some other portion of our city, or if they're helping recruitment for seasonal individuals for parks or something else, that's a huge return on investment for a relatively small amount that we would be investing into our city. So I just really am going to advocate strongly for that public information officer again, not to mention the benefits that come with all of the other organizations that communicate with the city. Currently, they're having to communicate with multiple departments, and that takes a lot of time on their end, versus a PIO, they just go to one individual. So I just really am going to advocate for that in regard to the return on investment for a relatively small amount of money.
Thank you very much. Councilor Tricky, and I'm just going to, before I give it to Councilor Tricky, just think about this, Chris. How would we pay for a PIO? Specifically, could that person charge multiple departments internally and spread those costs across a number of departments? You don't have to answer that now. Let's recognize Councilmember Tricky, but at some point maybe comment on that. Councilmember Tricky?
I'm wondering, I'm looking at the page from last night, the additional resources, $4.3 million. And I'm wondering, is that list that's there, is that including the list that we have in this year's budget as well? Or,
So you're looking at the public safety
yeah,
presentation from last night, and you're asking if the 4.3,
which is what I'm assuming you based the $96 or whatever it was mill levy number on.
the $96 actually is all 6.4. So if you go further in that presentation, it's the full 6.4 is what that $96 will cover.
Okay, I guess my question then is, does that 6.4 include the positions that we're adding in this year's budget?
Yes, if I may.
Thanks.
Yeah, so the imbalance in the general fund is 1.3 million.
That was the first one.
That's this year, that's what's up there right now.
Okay.
We're recommending.
So at the end of the day, we'll still be, if we staff this all up, we'll still be right at the charter limit for the number of mills we can have. Correct.
Yeah, we don't have extra, none of this has extra estimated mills that we would anticipate the council not utilizing. Now, what we will show you in between now and on the 14th is based on the direction from last night. If we do really keep up with the primary approach, then we would phase it. I wouldn't propose all 96 in 1 year. We could break that over 2 years, and then some of you suggested Fire Station 8 might be in a 3rd year. So we'll show you what could that look like, phasing that over 3 years. And obviously it's going to be higher than 96 at the fire station, but phasing it over 3 years versus 1, you're going to be, a third roughly. So instead of $8 a month or $10, $12 a month, or $8, $12 a month, chop that in thirds as to what the effect would be on the typical property owner in each of the 3 years of phasing.
Chris, the newspaper story in today's newspaper, in mentioning that $96, said that was on a median home price and used the old median home price as an example of $211,000. Obviously, the median home price is far above that, meaning that the actual cost is also probably quite a bit ahead of that. Did I miss that, or was that, how did you come up with the 96? What were you using for a median home?
Actually, we used 217. And the 217, Andy, help me with where the 217 number comes from, because it's not what you'd sell your home for. Nor there was the 211, but we updated it for the new data.
Yep, so the median home, what we know to be true today, median home value that the DOR has given us is $217,400. And that, so when, as you're aware, this coming August, we're gonna get new values, and then I'll have a new median home value at that time. So last August, I got new values. That median home was $217,400.
So August of 2020. Was that?
That's the most current data we have, so yes.
So a year ago when we were using 211, that was because the latest data we had was a year prior. So we moved from 211 to 217 in that 12-month period. What we'll move to next year is an estimate, but.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for staff? Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Andy and Chris, I guess I'll ask both this. You're taking 11.6 million of the CARES Act money and putting it into our budget this year. How much of it is left? And what projects should we be adding for this 2022 budget or the 2023 budget, this coming budget cycle? Is there any other things that we should be adding and looking and putting it in there? I mean, I would like to see us, we had to cut out $1 million in some of the parks building of those shelters. And it's too bad because a lot of people want to get outside. And I know the Heights had some really plans for kind of creating some outdoor activities up there with the New Heights Business Association. They're going to start holding events up there and things like that. So it would be nice if we could find out how much is there that we could maybe start bringing into the budget into these one-time expenses to, public safety, some of the Law and Justice Center, some other things and maybe some money into different parks. We put 2.3 or almost $3 million into Centennial a few years ago. We put $1 million into Holly Vista. And so there could be some money we could put into some of the other parks. Mainly I'm thinking of Castle Rock Park. So how much is there that we can start taking a look at?
All right, Mayor, Councilmember Neese, I'm looking for the page number to tell you where to go look. It's right around 20 million. I believe you put the exact number in there. Yes, okay. On page 10 of your budget book, we have a paragraph titled CARES Act 2020. And because we receive reimbursement, the CARES Act expenses actually were for the public safety salaries. That was 19 million. So that freed up 19 million in the general fund. We have this year 11.6 million for law and justice. We have 1.5 million for the fire station. I think there's another 450,000 for deferred maintenance. I would call that fire time as well in fire.
So two pieces I'd add to that. So remember, because of the way CARES Act was distributed, your flexibility is pretty darn broad. And I agree with you totally conceptually that we should look at our capital improvement plan and look at what projects do we want to move up the list, or what projects do we want to add to investments in that area. As we've been waiting on the rules of what would happen with ARPA, I think that's clearly not going to have as much flexibility as CARES. So we've wanted to kind of understand that better before we spent this. It's going to be far more restrictive. Secondly, I'm reminded that the 11.6 was our consultant's number on the purchase value. And that particular building is a shell. So there would need to be more money invested in that facility to open it up as a law and justice center and as a city hall replacement. So keep that in mind. And so I think into the first quarter of the next fiscal year, and as these things start to come to light, I think we should be making decisions about budget amendments and spending of that one-time money in those areas that you prioritize.
So just to clarify, so you don't think we would maybe take a look at spending any of this excess money until sometime next year?
I think into the first quarter, because we just got the 151-page description of ARPA, and we've got grant applications we got to make by the end of the next month for state. I really do think it's in this next 90-day window that we need to make those decisions, and it might be a little premature in the next days and weeks, but we're coming up to it fast as information is starting to come to us.
Okay, all right.
Councilmember Boyette?
Yes, maybe for Kevin, if we spend 11.6 million to purchase a building, had you anticipated any cost? What was the cost of build out? Just some ballpark figures, or have you thought of that?
Councilmember Boyette, yes, we've thought of that, and our figures are old before some of this inflationary construction cost had hit. So we'd have to go and recalculate that, which this would be very conservative size. We were in the $5+ million to do some renovation for that building.
And we've got numbers, but unfortunately, Andy's computer we're having connection issues tonight. But yes, we've absolutely have those estimates, not including what's been happening in the construction industry. And we've deliberately didn't put them in, frankly, from a negotiation standpoint, right? Everything you talk about and everything that's in that book is public information. So just in the past 24 hours, we've gotten appraisals. And so we got the meetings lined up so to move that discussion from where it's been sitting into where it gets real in dollars, and it will affect all of this.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Ewald.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this is going to be considered in this year's budget or not, but the $3 million to get sewer and water out to that development on Alkali Creek. Some of this money is infrastructure money that the state's sending out. I can't really think of a better option for infrastructure than that because it would help get the inner belt loop operational with actual building going on to start bringing some money in. It was 4 years ago or 5 years ago when they spent $3 million to run sewer and water out to the Legion School to get 20 acres next to the city that would never pay a dime of tax to the city. And they didn't bat an eye about it, but what an opportunity to start getting the water and sewer, at least, 3 miles or something like that they're going with it? Or a mile and a half, I can't remember which it is, but that's a great start for getting that sewer and water, that infrastructure out there on the inner belt loop. So I think that would be a great place to apply to get some of that money to get that done.
So the team met earlier this week. Towards the top, if not the top of the list, is to recommend to you guys that the infrastructure, the backbone infrastructure of the inner belt loop, it is one of the top priorities the staff would recommend. Tomorrow we'll be talking about that some, and we're also talking with, we got a meeting, Debbie and I, with the county during the county commissioners meeting on Thursday, to talk to them about the reality, right? We're talking tens of millions of dollars for the full. 3.2 million is in the proposed budget to get it to that first developed property that's about to develop. We need more than just a handshake. That development along the inner belt loop is going to connect to those utilities and be serviced by the city, I would think, speaking for you. Tens of millions of dollars ultimately is what it will take for that backbone. So those conversations, we're trying to tee ourselves up to have that recommendation to you as to what to do there on the utility side.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for staff? Before we go to public comment on non-agenda items. Anything else?
Is it public comment for these items?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Let's go there now. This has been a great discussion. Let's open it for public comment on everything we've been talking about tonight. Please give us your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Lou, thank you. Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Ed Gulick. I live at 3015 10th Avenue North. A few things that went over tonight. I'm Vice President of High Plains Architects, and we do work in many cities across the state, but Billings is one of them. And just want to say that we really like doing work with the Billings Building Division. They don't contract their work out. I'm glad to see that they're fully staffed now. When the places that contract out tend to, I don't know if contractors get paid by the amount of comments they generate, but there are a lot of very superfluous stuff that happens that we just end up having to spend our clients' money to defend and ultimately doesn't give any value to the projects. So the Billings Building Division does great work. We recently had a ransomware attack of our own at a firm that's of 10 people. It was actually DarkSide, the same that did the Colonial pipeline. So this is real stuff that we are encountering, even a little tiny office in Billings, Montana. Fortunately, we're not really set up for backups for this kind of a threat. We were more set up for backups of fire or equipment failure. So our only saving grace was that we had an old server that we had just replaced 2 months before, so we had a lot of clean stuff because they went back and encrypted all of our backup as well, our offsite backup. So it's real. Lastly, I guess I'll also put in a pitch for public information officer. I think, especially if we're thinking about in the future, a parks district selling this to the public, when you don't have good information consistently getting out there, you get distrust, you get apathy, and it's hard to move things forward in a city based on distrust and or just lack of information. So I know that there's a deficit, so it's how do you do it? But I think there are ways that we can see some other benefits that if we can monetize that some way. So my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment here in the library? Not seeing anybody coming to the podium, so if you're watching online, this is your opportunity to comment on all of these budget presentations that we've been listening to this evening. You'll need to go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and hit the raise hand feature. Denise, do we have anybody online who would like to comment?
No, Mayor, we have no attendees tonight on Zoom.
Okay, well then we won't wait a whole long time. Then we'll close the public comment on item number 1 and move on to items of general council discussion before public comment on non-agenda items. Councilmember Yakowicz.
Thank you, Under Council. Actually, it's part of a plug for what we just heard, so it's part of discussion too. But the library is really an amazing facility, and I come here about once a week, and I brought my wife and my daughter here yesterday. And what I think it's great about this is a lot of people don't or can't afford books, and there's a lot of books in this library. And my daughter grabbed a number of them, and it just a lot of DVD. I got Netflix, but a lot of movies you can't get on Netflix here. So just a great resource here, and I really appreciate it. Segue into another part is building. I have to give kudos to Larry and Dave who clean our facility at City Hall. You know, here at this library, it's very clean. I mean, we have great staff that behind the scene that does a lot of cleaning. IT, Dave does this test for us city council. I don't always pass it. So I may be the only one that doesn't pass it, but it's a pass. It's about viruses and all that. But great job, Dave. That's just I enjoy doing that. And human relations, you know, I think we all agree. Mrs. Maddox, who is the face of our city council, for a lot of us, just good people, very professional. And I think Mrs. Maddox has a lot to do with that. And Mrs. Staton, who kind of trains and teaches people. And, you know, finally, just thinking about parks, I wish I was in charge of parks in terms of I can make a lot of kids happy. You know, it's about the only one that had a lot of happy smiles and that. And although some people in the Heights complain a lot, or I mean sometimes, you know, dog park, how long has it been? 8 years, and there's never been a bathroom in Heights.
That's right.
So, oh, Frank, I'm just kidding you too. High Sierra Dog Park. What? So you guys got it. They got it. And I don't know if there was a ribbon cutting, but I missed it. If there was. And finally, for our ward, you know, the parks has really done a lot for us with the South Park and North Park, Pioneer Park, and that. So just a council discussion on that. I appreciate that. All was presented today. Thank you, Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Yakowicz. You're always a bundle of encouragement, and we appreciate that. We're going to miss you someday when you leave us. We're going to need that. Somebody's going to have to play that role. Thanks very much. Any other items of general council discussion? Councilmember Neese.
Yeah, I don't know if that was your farewell speech or but thanks for mentioning us up in the Heights, and thanks for helping with that bathroom up there.
Yes,
You didn't come to the ribbon cutting.
So I wasn't invited.
It was a toilet paper cut.
That's right.
I think it was.
For a long, good.
All right, we'll move on then to public comment on non-agenda items. This is your opportunity to comment on anything that wasn't on our agenda tonight. There's nobody online. Denise, correct me if that changes, but is there anybody here in the library who would like to comment on anything not on our agenda tonight?
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tim Warburton, 3444 Lucky Penny Lane. I wanted to wait until tomorrow night to address you guys, but I have a driver's ed course I have to take for my 15-year-old son to see what that's about. And considering the timing, I'm not sure if how our paths are going to cross, so I wanted to make sure I got a couple comments into you guys. I wrote down I should probably consider offering out of my own salary the cost of an officer or two, at least since I'm gonna have a 15-year-old here soon driving, but this is non-binding, so I'm just saying, watch out there. But I wanted to get to a couple of things, since it's been so long since I've seen you guys in person, so. I just wanted to say well done to you all the last year, navigating the pandemic, to Chris and his team as well. Having called in a time or two, though, it is nice to be here and see you guys in person, not have to worry about the delay and trying to figure all that out. So it's nice to see you guys and read your expressions. Meeting in person is much different, and I think it's important, but I would say and encourage y'all to use the last year as an opportunity to be flexible with the public, with council members, that are traveling, or just the more people that we can get to participate, I think the better. So I like coming here, but I did also appreciate having the chance to call in from my couch and also spend that time with my family too. So I just wanted to say, yeah, anything we can do to make it easier to make people participate, I think we should do that. I think last night, tonight, shows a pretty clear priority of public safety here in the community. In fact, it's all I heard about today after last night's meeting. And I had a couple people say they've considered moving away after the recent crime stuff, and I just think it's important. We've been hearing for years about a workforce shortage that's coming, and that appears to be here. It's not just because people are sitting at home on their couch not wanting to work. There literally are not enough people here to work. And with the current crime, we're going to be driving people away, making this problem worse. So it really is something that we need to get a hold of. And I thought the community showed a lot of support last night. And I think they'll be there again. I think the message last night, though, to keep in mind was that you need to keep it clear. Don't muddy the waters. Don't start making it weird with Park District 1 and parks. It's a pretty clear message last night. Focus on public safety and get it done. It's a real big problem. Finally, I wanted to finish by talking about an event that happened last year. I often think about the call that I made to you guys and some of your reactions. Much more than anything, though, I just wanted to say thank you for standing up and saying that decency still matters. As a community, we can't have it both ways. We can't say we want good people to come get involved, volunteer, be a part of it, but also go ahead and take some abuse and harassment at the same time and don't get paid for it. And I think that includes you guys too. I don't think that should. I think it goes for everybody. Decency still matters, and it should matter. So I wanted to say thank you for that. I wanted to say thanks specifically to Councilmember Purrington and to Councilmember Shaw for reaching out directly after the meeting last year when I called in and offering your support. And Councilmember Neese, I could tell during watching the video back that my comments had really mattered, and I really appreciated that. So I just think that Billings, under this type of leadership, is a place that I would still encourage people to get involved, serve on a board, or volunteer. So if you're watching or listening later, I know there's openings, and I would encourage you to get involved. Finally, I'll just say, despite policy differences, or even comments I've made questioning preparations or lines of questions, I believe that you're all good people in general, and all want what's best for Billings. And if I had more time, I'd probably say one nice thing about each of you, but my time is up. So. Thank you.
All righty, thank you very much, Mr. Warburton. Okay, I don't see any other commentators, so we are adjourned until same bat time, same bat library tomorrow.
ourselves in the process there.
Although the world often mourns those who are sacrificed in warfare, both combatants and civilians,